Dies Irae, episode number 2.
Yeah, there was 0 in the first one, and this is
Third
the
one.
third.
This is the
Yeah.
third overall episode, but his episode number is 2. Before we get started, I wanted to touch on a little bit of the thematic stuff that we were talking about last episode. Especially with the name dropping of Zarathustra. I thought it might be relevant for us to talk about this little thing from Nietzsche. This concept in some of Nietzsche's writings, referred to as amor fati, or love of fate, which he comments on in Ecce Homo, by stating that my formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it. All idealism is mendacity in the face of what is necessary, but love it. So he postulates that that the great man is one who doesn't hate his existence, but instead loves it and wants to preserve it. And I think this is interesting because that's kind of what Ren presented himself as in the way beginning of the prologue, when he said that he never had the drive that Shido had of changing everything and turning. He wanted to preserve the normalcy of his life. He enjoyed being boring. It wasn't boring to him being just a normal person. So I think that's a pretty clear kind of demonstration of that virtue from what Nietzsche is talking about. But to what extent that'll reflect?
Zevlen,
Yeah, go on.
there is a problem
Yeah?
on the screen, actually.
Yeah?
It is Zoom. I don't know why it is. It is the same for you, Mapo? Like, it is extremely Zoom.
It doesn't look like
I
it
don't
to
know.
me.
Sorry, what? What did he say?
He's asking if the stream is zoomed in for you.
No, it's not.
It looks
No?
okay to me.
Oh,
On mine.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, it looks
Wait a minute.
okay to me.
Wait a minute.
Okay, let me. So this is chapter 1. I think L'Enfant de la Punition was what it was called, the Child of Punishment. Sadly, it isn't recorded in the chat history because it was a little video, but it was dark out by the time that I got home. Oh my god, that's a Paradise Lost poster. What the fuck? Wait, okay, so context, Paradise Lost is the prequel game to Dies Irae in the Masada-verse trilogy.
Oh, I didn't know about it.
Yeah, Paradise Lost was the game. Oh, I can't say that or else I'm going to spoil it, but we're going to come back to it at the way end of the visual novel when we know everything.
I would like to make a reference. I won't say much because it is a big spoiler, but is it like Fire Force?
I'm not sure. I haven't watched that.
Okay.
But Paradise Lost was the previous game to this, and the next game to this is Kajiri Kamui Kagura. So, yeah, most people only know about KKK, but they don't know about Paradise Lost. Neither has been translated to English. In fact, I think they're going to reference the story of Paradise Lost later. But anyway, we're going to get to that when we get to that. I had almost passed out at the museum earlier. I managed to make it back.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Does Paradise Lost have, besides the name, any heavy influences from the Paradise Lost?
Kinda. It plays with the characters, some of the characters from that epic, but mostly it it references Paradise Lost in tone, because the Masadaverse kind of like every game in the Masadaverse has a title that originates in religious literature, right? Paradise Lost, Dies Irae, and Kajiri Kamui Kagura are all three different like religious texts, and it's also a very like elevated total art operatic thing about big themes. It is kind of about the struggle between totalitarian order and the ability to break from that, kind of like how Dies Irae is, but to a heightened degree. And Paradise Lost is to an extent about that, so there's that thematic connection, but yeah, it isn't like a retelling or anything. I had almost passed out at the museum earlier. I managed to make it back okay, but I still wasn't feeling too hot. At least it was a consolation that Kasumi wasn't the type of person to get upset about having to deal with stuff like this. However, on the other hand, that also meant that she was the type to fret endlessly. My current goal was to figure out some way to make her leave me alone. If I didn't, she was liable to try to spend the entire night here watching over me or something.
She spent the night there? Okay. Is that bad?
Well, apparently he has like very bad self-worth issues, because he feels, I don't know if he feels offended at the prospect of her having to care for him because he does think that he's going to be okay, or if he just feels like he isn't deserving of that attention and that care, which is kind of like what we got from the hospital, right? Like he feels like he needs to be, he wants to be cared for, but he doesn't feel like he's deserving of that attention, even if it's justifiable. I feel like there is a little bit of that. Which I guess is something that we might get into if they try to explain why his parents haven't made an appearance yet. I knew that she was just trying to help, but I still couldn't really think straight after what happened earlier. I probably came across as harsher than I intended, which is a classic trickster trait, being a fucking asshole for no reason.
怪我はとっくに治ってるから病人扱いするなって。あんまり心配されてると本当に気分がめいってくる。
でも今日誘ったのは私だし、なんか責任感じちゃうし、レンちょっと頼りないし。
お前さりげなく失礼だな。
She did have a point, to be fair. I wasn't the type of person people looked for help.
頼りがいのあるお前が俺に付き合って倒れたら困るだろ。だから。
私そんなに嫌じゃない。
It's kind of make me question what happened with their with their parents.
Right.
But
俺もそんなに嫌じゃないよ。だいたい俺を気遣ってるなら不毛なやりとりに付き合わせるなよ。ただでさえ明日から学校行くのが億劫なのに。
あ、そうだった。ダメだよレン、サボっちゃ。
今日サボったやつに言われてもな。
私はいいの。ちゃんと毎日通ってたから1日くらい平気だよ。
I feel like there might definitely be, they might be hinting at maybe like parental issues, because she's trying to stand in for a caring mom here, and he's having none of it. So
I can kind of see she's actually like a mother. She's actually like a sister, and at the same time a little bit like a girlfriend.
Right.
I don't know.
There's definitely
So like any other anime girl.
Well, yeah, but
no. I think this time it is a little bit too much, you know. I think this time
there's a sincerity to her attempt to appoint motherly care on him. I feel like that's what they're trying to sell here. That he doesn't want to accept this level of care, maybe because of the self-worth issue, but also maybe because it reminds him of something about his own mother. I don't think she would be offering this maternal role if he already had a mother in his life, is what I'm trying to get at.
でもレンは
And I don't think he would be having trouble accepting it
留年しちゃうよ
if that
長
wasn't a
引けると
conflicted role in his perspective.
一緒に卒業したいもんね
Oh, this is what it's about girlfriend.
Right.
Let's go graduate together. There's the mother type and the
だった
sister
ら早く
type.
寝る
だからさっきからそう言ってるだろ。それをお前がごちゃごちゃと。
うるさいなこの不健康児は口答えするんじゃない
And
の
the sister type.
Right. Kasumi threw some sheets on top of me. Surely there were less direct methods of getting someone into bed.
じゃあおやすみ明日起こしに来るからね
それはいいけど、おいかすみ。ちゃんと玄関から出ていけよ。おい。
This is actually funny.
Does she think she could get away with anything just by laughing it off?
それはちょっとめんどいなとか
Wait a sec. I hate this thing in the videos when like I start getting WhatsApp notifications. I always forget to mute everything.
普通はその面倒なことが常識なんだ
But
ろ。大体。
I don't think it appears in the video.
I think it does, but they're sparse. But I always notice them because I'm looking for them. I gestured to the wall next to me inside.
いい加減大家に怒られるぞ。いくら隣同士だからって。
Yeah, so there's definitely if he cares about the landlord, then he's not living with his parents, which is unusual for a teenager, a high schooler.
This is a funny part.
She would be in deep shit if the landlord found out that she had knocked out a goddamn hole into the wall and turned it into some sort of corridor. God damn! Like, this was the sort of thing people got kicked out for. I think this is the kind of thing people get arrested for, actually.
Yeah. And how she did that without anyone noticing.
Well, if it's made out of drywall is like paper thin. So it wouldn't even make a noise.
Okay.
Kasumi and I had moved into this apartment together when we enrolled in our current school. It took her less than a week to come up with the idea to construct this little side entrance.
でも同じアパートの隣に住んで助け合うってのが一人暮らしの条件だったしいいじゃないこの方が密にフォローできるんだから
It definitely
Oh,
feels...
so her mother's okay with this.
Her mother's okay with it. It feels weird because this arrangement is like common with college students. I think there's a little bit of that motif that we were talking about last episode of growing up and then having to transit to a mundane lifestyle where like they're kind of being forced to grow up here. You know, they're living by themselves next to each other, having to cooperate away from their parent figures quite early. And the necessity of doing that
親
might
も
be
まさかここまでやってるとは思ってないだろ。絶対に。
そうかな
そうだよ。
頭固いなだいたい事の発端はシローなんだし私に言われても困っちゃうよ
Believe it or not, she wasn't lying. Kasumi, Shido, and myself had all lived together in this apartment complex, all three rooms next to each other in a row. It happened late at night. Out of nowhere, Shido broke down the wall separating our rooms and barreled in here with a hammer still in his hand, saying he suddenly got the urge to play me in a fighting game. How stupid could he get?
で、何を土地狂ったか、お前も真似したんだよな。ご丁寧に。
私はハンマーなんて野蛮なことはしてないけどね
She was barbaric enough to go down the hardware store the next day and buy a power saw, some tarps, and a mask at least. Anyway, I had the bad fortune to live in between these two idiots, and I ended up with holes on both sides of my room. Privacy? What's that? Kasumi and Shido would often just cut through here to visit each other, and my room became a sort of natural gathering place in general.
せめて四郎の穴だけでも塞がせろよ。
ダメよ戻ってきたらどうするの
There was no what if. Shido was never coming back, whether Kasumi knew it or not.
きっとまたみんな元通りになるんだから私とレンと 素人でね。
As another cut, I think it's interesting that like while Ren has some trickster traits, and the trickster is kind of like the collective shadow of humanity as a whole, it does feel like Shiro is Ren's shadow. Like he does all these things that Ren thinks are stupid and impulsive and stuff, but he sees the sincerity in them, and he wants to do them deep down. There's like in the prologue when they fight each other, it's not like Ren isn't forced into it. He just does it because there's that vulnerability in that moment that he's able to let the shadow out and do the work. So there's this interesting kind of relationship between the two of them that I think is noteworthy.
In the case of Ren, it looks like more that he is afraid of changing.
Right.
But it is not like he doesn't like.
It's the relationship
Like
between
stuff.
the man and the shadow, right? Like it's the part of you that you don't want to let out, that you're afraid of letting out because of the judgment and the fact that it's so out there and weird.
だな。
And because of the no too.
じゃあおやすみ。
Right. That's the part that you repress, that you don't want to deal with, that you're afraid of knowing that you're able to be. Kasumi smiled sweetly and returned to her room, through the hole in the wall. I could tell by the complete lack of dust in my room that she had bothered to clean it while I was stuck in the hospital. Probably Shido's, too. I would never admit it out loud, but I did appreciate the consideration. At the same time, though, I couldn't help but wonder if I really deserved having her look after me like this. Actually, you can kind of see the whole repression mechanic where after he let the shadow out, right? After they had that fight on the rooftop and he was confronted with that part of himself in his friend, he's repressing the shadow. He's like, no, I'm definitely not interacting with this guy again. He's not coming back. I don't want to have to face that one more time instead of trying to, work through what that event was.
I don't want to face this side of me.
Right, exactly. He's not really afraid of Shido, he's afraid of himself.
Yeah, that's true.
Kasumi knew nothing. By all rights, right now we should have been...
That's also why he kind of feels like he doesn't deserve the things.
Right.
'Cause he just is living automatically, with security, with the day by day.
This line of thought would get me nowhere. I decided right then and there to stop mulling over the past. What was done was done. It wasn't healthy to keep obsessing like this. There was no way the girl I saw at the museum could have actually been real. She was just a hallucination, meaningless clutter that was born from my unstable mental state.
そうさ。
That was the only explanation. I lay down in bed. A good night's sleep would be sure to wash away the memory of today. I wouldn't remember a thing when I woke up the next morning, I was sure of it. I stared up at my own ceiling for the first time in 2 months. Amid familiar surroundings, I drifted off into sleep, gripped by a slight unease rather than a sense of comfort. Now then, let the curtains rise on tonight's Cagliostro. 'Tis a pleasure to make your acquaintance, my dear Zarathustra. I am but a humble jester, come to present to you with an opera. Consider me not more than a swindler, a charlatan. My name? I suppose Cagliostro shall suffice. Do allow me to regale you tonight with the tale of a girl I met while men still called me by that name. The tale of the fair princess of the Guillotine. The tale of her origins as well as how the two of us came to meet. I beg of you to forgive my brevity. It all came about as the result of simple bad luck. Nothing more, nothing less. Humans are bound by their birth. The average man cannot help but compete with an absolute brought about by sheer chance at birth, regardless of his foibles or virtues. My story deals with just such circumstances. Unfortunately, there are many who fail to grasp the subtleties of these matters. Allow me to apologize for beginning by airing some tiresome grievances of mine. The less reasonable among us have a tendency to seek an explanation for anyone who they might perceive as breaking the mold, be they a mighty hero, a blithering madman, or a miserable victim. Did they reach their status through tireless effort? Perhaps because they possessed a rare resolve. Or could it be because of some traumatic event in their past? Preposterous assumptions, the lot of them. It's all nothing more than self-projection on the part of the common man, an expression of the fanciful idea that they too could have turned out that way, that they too are capable of reaching the same level, they should be granted the same opportunity. Such sentiments are little more than masturbation, pitiful attempts to drag the supernatural down to their level and reduce it to something they are capable of understanding. Miserable knaves, the lot of them. They are incapable of cherishing their fellow man without first forcing themselves to believe that all others operate on the same logic as them. Such fools would be better off conversing with a mirror. You will no doubt find tonight's story unpleasant, but I trust that your soul is not tainted enough to imitate the folly of lesser men. In this world there exist beings of utmost purity. Yes, I speak of her. Search the entire universe and you shall find no peers. From the moment of her birth she was complete. She did not and would not receive she did not and would never receive even the barest mite of influence from the vulgar outside world. The scar on her neck ever flagrant, her words pregnant with only hex, fated to remain forlorn, doomed to never be loved. Even an existence such as mine could not compete with a being as miraculously immaculate as her. For the first time I laid eyes upon true beauty. I clutched a hand to my chest, overcome by the nature of her being. Ah, how wonderful was man to bring forth something so spectacular by mere chance. I knew immediately on some primal level that hers was not a state of being that others could hope to aspire to. One could devote his life to unraveling the mysteries of dusty grimoires, and never so much as set foot upon the mystic plane that was her dominion. She was absolute in her otherness. I must confess, I found myself envious of her. I'm sure you scoff at that very notion, of course. I can say that meeting her was the one true moment of brilliance to be found amongst the miserable ordeal of my life. In a way, it represented a loss on my part, yet defeat has never tasted sweeter. I finally discovered a goal to strive toward amid the endless expanse of the wasteland that I had wandered aimlessly for so long. I shall kneel before you, my beloved queen. I shall devote my very being to you, to the task of leading your soul to salvation. That shall be my opera, the day of wrath that shall rend asunder the accursed ghetto that is this universe. The title drop, Day of Wrath, title drop. Come now. 'Tis time to take center stage, Zarathustra. Take her hand and lead her in dance. I would like nothing more than for you to dazzle me. Before we go on, I wanted to make 3 observations on the psychoanalysis stuff. Number 1, the soundtrack that was playing there, this kind of theme that was played alongside the first speech of Mercurius. It's called Unus Mundus, which is a Jungian concept referring to the unity of the world in the sense of the collective subconscious of humanity, where everybody is part of the same psychological system, where all the archetypes and the primarily understood information of our existences. Jung didn't believe in people being tabula rasa when they were born. He thought that everyone was born with access to that pool of information, that basic kind of shared pool of information, which is a occult idea. And there's a lot of traffic between the occult and Jungian psychoanalysis, which we'll get to eventually. But the other thing that I wanted to note was that he's presenting this woman as a maiden, right? Like the perfect and pure, virginal, untouched, idealized woman character that is to be lusted for by the hero, and to be rescued, right? To be saved. And the maiden is interesting because not only is she a character in her own, but she's also part of the anima, which is the female character within the man. For Jung to the man and the woman had to fill out a character arc during the course of their lives to become whole. The woman had to develop the man inside of her, and the man had to develop the woman. And when the man first became aware of his anima, the first stage of that was to become aware of the maiden. He saw that purity and that sincerity and that femininity, and he looks for it to fill out the maleness that's imposed on him by his animus. And so I feel like all of that is at play here in the presentation of Cagliostro in his relationship to this perfect maiden character. Suddenly, I heard the sound of waves crashing against the shore. I found myself standing on a mysterious beach bathed in the crimson hue of dusk. This was a place far removed from the hectic fervor of the city. I could hear nothing but the quiet murmur of the waves and the sporadic chirping of birds somewhere in the distance. The scenery around me possessed a fleeting beauty, one brought about by the setting sun as it melted into the contours of the distant sea. This was the sort of sight that would normally vanish in an instant, but somehow I knew that here it would persist eternally. This was a moment frozen in time. Half of the sun had already sunk beyond the horizon, but the remaining half would never budge. The waves continuing to roll in and out were surely governed by something other than the tidal force I was familiar with. Suddenly I understood. This was a dream. There wasn't a beach like this anywhere near Suwahara City, and hell, it didn't even really look like somewhere in Japan. I had set foot on foreign soil, set foot on a temporal plane removed from the present. It would seem that I understood the nature of this place on an instinctual level. By all means, I should have felt some sense of bewilderment, being confronted by so surreal a scene, but I simply found myself captivated by it. There was a certain nostalgic atmosphere about the place that spoke to me. No, maybe what really drew me in was the sense of stagnation. This was a world frozen in time, possessed of the beauty of an everlasting sunset. The very concept of the flow of time was meaningless here. An eternal twilight, decorated by a sun that would never dip below the horizon. This world existed on the border between day and night, its very existence a precarious reverie fallen between the cracks of reality. I felt truly at peace here, within this concentrated moment. I sat down on the beach, absently staring out at the sea and listening to the waves. I found myself overcome with a peculiar sense of déjà vu. Even though I had never laid eyes on this place before, it was like I was already deeply familiar with it. Obviously, this was all just a dream, but it was a pleasant feeling nonetheless. Knowing what you're dealing with in advance means that you can handle anything it might throw your way. Foreknowledge means it is possible to avoid dangerous situations and prolong pleasant ones, to make better, more meaningful decisions. Or in the words of Zarathustra from Alzos Pach, all joys yearn for eternity, right? This malaise of happiness in trust in the destiny of the world, the amor fati that we were talking about. What could bring about a greater sense of peace? Yes, my ideal world was knowing everything in advance, going around in circles until the day you die. Was that your heart's desire? She cut across my line of vision at nearly the exact same time as I turned around. For the first time, I knew what it meant to have your breath taken away. The world that immediately came to mind was enchanting. I felt certain that anyone who came across this girl on this beach would be stunned in the same way that I was. She was outfitted in a shabby, worn-out dress. No one could call her attire elegant, but on her it exuded a radiance that women of high society could never hope to attain with even their most extravagant formal wear. The beauty of the maiden, again. She's beautiful because she's pure and untouched, not because of what she wears. Her long hair emanated an auburn aura, lit up by the dull red glow of the setting sun as she danced across the wet sand of the beach. The stark white angles peering out from the hem of the dress offered a sharp contrast to the warm colors of the world around her. She turned to face me, emerald eyes gleaming with a gentle light. I couldn't take my eyes off of her. She was like a gemstone cut into human form. And as I stared, she began to sing, a ghost of a smile playing across her face. I could only give myself unto her song, unto the sweet refrain brought forth by the heavenly voice. The words L'enfant de la Punition certainly flashed through my head. I didn't know what those words meant, or why they came to me now. Her song was a melody unfamiliar to me. However, I felt certain that it was some sort of prayer, perhaps a hymn unbeknownst to all but her. The girl before me was utterly pure, removed from our base world. How could a melody spilling forth from the lips of a being so immaculate be anything but a prayer? Was it possible to listen to a song you had never heard before within a dream? I didn't know, but there was no sense of pondering such questions. She was beautiful, plain, and simple. That was enough to make everything else seem... Something felt vaguely out of place. Was I overlooking something important? The stirring of emotion I had felt up to this moment dissolved. Listening with a clear head, the lyrics of her song began to form intelligible sentences. I had been a fool. Throughout Japan's history, twilight, the borderline between day and night, had been regarded as the time when the boundaries between the natural and supernatural grew thin. Twilight was when the inhuman walked among the living. All along, the girl had been mad.
血が欲しい。ギロチンに注ごう。飲み物を。ギロチンの渇きよ。欲しいのは血。
She continued singing, the same smile as ever adorning her features. Her emerald eyes were as clear as the surface of a pristine lake without a trace of malevolence to be found, which was precisely why the scene before me was so horrifying. She possessed a childlike innocence in jarring contrast to the utter profanity of her accursed song. Her song reverberated inside my head, splitting itself into seemingly endless echoes. As I stared at her, I caught a glimpse of the crimson band around her neck through her disheveled hair, unmistakably the work of a guillotine's blade. This was the same girl I had met in the museum, the cursed girl who had met her end by the guillotine. L'enfant de la Punition, the damned girl. I was assaulted by a sudden, brutal impact as if I'd been hit by a Sami. My vision went black. In the next moment, I found myself in the midst of a turbulent crowd gathered around gallows set up in the center of a plaza. A torrent of sheer delirium, fueled by fear and hatred, and a dark elation consumed everything. The scenery around me little more than churning chaos. A deafening chorus filled my ears. Je veux le sang, sang, sang et sang. Donnons le sang de guillotine. Pour guérir la sécheresse de la guillotine, je veux le sang, sang, sang et sang. The frenzied crowd was singing the same song that I had heard only moments earlier. Back in the time period when public executions like this were commonplace, it must have been the hymn they offered before the guillotine. The elites, the clergy, and the common man had come together, all with the simple purpose of seeing a criminal decapitated before her eyes, to see my head fly from my shoulders. That's right, don't ask me why, but the criminal strapped to the guillotine was none other than myself. Next to me, some sort of official was calling out the crowd, speaking in a language that I didn't recognize. It would seem he was recruiting a volunteer to act as the executioner. It wasn't long before a man emerged from the crowd. He released the guillotine's blade, and my head tumbled to the ground, bathed in the queer tones of eternal dusk. My spine was severed in an instant, inducing ataxia, but my ability to feel the pain had been lost along with the connection between my brain and the rest of my body. I could do nothing but stare up at my headless body as it spewed forth blood, which was what I was talking about last episode. the guillotine not immediately severing the awareness of the guillotined. Ah, my heart was still beating. I wanted nothing more than to extend a hand to my body, but that was impossible now. All I could do was lie on the ground, listening to that abominable refrain.
So good. So good. But it matched perfectly with the scene.
I know, right? I love it. I jolted out of bed, only to find that it was already light outside. I immediately reached for my neck. It was, of course, still attached to the rest of my body. Was it though?
I don't know.
And then he finds out he bleed himself.
Right. I slumped down. Dream or not, that experience was no laughing matter. It was just in bad taste, and above all else, I wasn't very happy about the fact that Kasumi, who snuck into my room like this on a daily basis, had just seen the whole thing. I wouldn't have been released from the hospital if I hadn't made a full recovery, so this dream had nothing to do with my injuries. It was nice that Kasumi was worried about me, but if I didn't make things clear now, she'd end up driving us both to ruin.
デリケートなんだよ俺は。枕が変わってうまく寝つけなかっただけ。あと人の寝顔をジロジロ見てる変態がいたせいだな。うなされてたのは。
それ私のこと？
他に一体誰がいると？うわ、
何この恩知らず。そんなこと言ってるともうご飯作ってあげないよ。
Kasumi gave me an exaggerated glance, shaking the kitchen knife she had brought from her room back and forth. No wonder I had had a nightmare. Who wouldn't if there was a scary person holding a knife staring at them while they're asleep? At least, that was what I tried to tell myself.
危なっかしいからしまえよそれ。俺の前でそんなもんちらつかせないでくれ。
それはあんたの部屋に包丁がないから悪いんでしょ。まったく私がいないとレトルトばっかり食べるくせに。少しはその辺感謝して多少の約束をくれたっていいじゃないの。
約束？
What's she going on about?
レンの寝顔可愛いんだなこれが。起きたら小生意気なんだけどね。
I began to seriously consider wrapping her in a blanket and throwing her out the window.
抱きしめて唇奪ってやろうかこの女。
Oh shit.
図星？
んなわけあるかよ。
Okay, face.
とにかく朝飯なら勝手にキッチン使っていいからさっさとしてくれ。
はーい。なんかレンって意外に亭主関白臭いよね。
Yeah, we call that being an asshole where I come from. Kasumi headed off to the kitchen, still waving that damn knife around. I really needed to look into closing up that hole in the wall. That said, her morning antics had done a good job of helping me forget about that horrible dream. I was grateful for that, at least. It's this weird thing about him, where he's like, obviously he likes this, but he is fucking incapable of expressing his appreciation. I don't know if it's because it makes him feel insecure, that maybe if he demonstrates appreciation, he comes off as being weak or something, or if it's because he really thinks he doesn't deserve any of it. But it's actually quite frustrating to see him.
I just think it is because he. I think it is related to the shut off demand, you know, that we were talking about.
Right.
I think it is just because he doesn't live up with his expectations, with his true wishes and what he doesn't conceal his thoughts, his wishes, and his wishes, because he has fear of them. So.
Well, it's definitely, I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Maybe
I'm
it's
trying to put it in words, but I think this depreciation of himself, it comes from there.
Right, I think that's true. It's definitely he comes off as being very conflicted because there's a big difference between his self and his persona, like what he projects outward, what he shows people, and
What he
usually
thinks it's normal.
what
And what he thinks it's normal. It is just like a social standard. Oh, it is normal, so I will do this.
right
It's
exactly.
normal, so I will do this.
It's
And the author likes to play with Zarathustra. I know he was talking about Zarathustra in other occasions, but it came to my head about Zarathustra.
Right.
Zarathustra and the Superman
right.
with Smash.
I think.
Ren
Oh, go on.
Ren live in the rules of the society, in the rules of the normal life. The author likes to play with the Zarathustra theme.
Right. I do think that it's telling that there's this big dissonance because and they were talking about how before in the last episode how he had like a very feminine face and he hated people making jokes about that. I think it breathes a lot of insecurity. He doesn't know who he is, or he's not comfortable with who he is. And
He's not careful
and
because
this ends up making him three different people. There's the shadow him that he represses. There's the real him, which he thinks about. And then there's this fucking weird, annoying, like hyper jockey persona that he puts out. Maybe because he thinks being an asshole is going to make people think of him as being more manly or something. To counterbalance his pretty boy aesthetic. I think that there might be something to that. I was grateful for that at least. It's currently 7:20 a.m. Kasumi and I sat at the table, about to get started on rice, grilled fish, and miso soup that she had made. Truly a Japanese breakfast if I had ever seen one. It was about 30 minutes from our apartment complex to the school, so right now we could afford to spend 10 minutes eating, 10 minutes cleaning up, 10 minutes getting ready. What the fuck?
は
Kasumi took a sip of tea, washing down the rice that had been stuck in her mouth. Has everyone taught this girl the first thing about manners?
制服クリーニングしといたからね。
あ
Memory served, it had been covered in blood and dust in addition to being ripped up all over. Our uniforms were made of white cloth, so it would have been hard to miss.
クリーニングでよく片付いたな。新しいの買おうかと思ってたのに。
そう言うだろうと思って注文もしといたけど、なんか少し時間がかかるって言われたから、新品が来るまでちょっとみっともないけど、これで我慢しなさいね。
Kasumi placed a folded uniform that had been lying next to her onto my lap. I opened it up to find that it had been patched together here and there.
何その顔。
いや、もしかしてこれ、お前が
悪いかこの文句あるか。
文句は別にないけどさ。
While Kasumi's cooking was more or less edible, her sewing skills left a lot to be desired.
まあ、ありがとう。あとは冬だし、ずっとコートでも着てりゃいいかな。
授業中もそれって校則違反じゃない？
固いこと言うなよ。病み上がりなんだ、俺は。
昨日は病人扱いするなって言ったくせに。
Kasumi shot me a glare, then proceeded to begin chowing down on the single tarako on her plate.
辛い。
Well, of course it was.
っていうかお前、それ二人で分けるんじゃないのかよ。何一人で丸ごとトライしてるんだ。
やかましいわね。あんたには絶対やらない。これうちのお母さんがくれたんだからね。
And so she began nibbling on her tarako, without even using rice to soften its taste.
辛いよ。
What the fuck is a tarako? Can somebody pull that out? I think I know what it is. But if I might be mistaken. Uh,
I'm trying to find it.
consistent.
It is
Tarakla and mentaiko are traditional.
traditional seafoods consistent on local road. Is it polo? I don't know.
It's a type of I see. It's a type of egg. It's a fish egg thing. It's kind of like rower eggs. So it's like caviar.
We actually should do this next time we meet.
We should make
This-
the Irae kitchen setup. She
We
looked like
should.
she was about to burst into tears.
お前頭大丈夫か？
大きなお世話ですバカ
I had a different thing in mind. She turned her whole body away from me in her chair. She apparently had no further intention of speaking to me. Not that I really gave a shit. It would have been nice if she could stop mumbling stuff like, oh, so spicy, but so good, while acting like that, though. It's kind of creeping me out. Since Kasumi had retreated into her own little world, I found myself without anything to do while we ate breakfast. I decided to check out what was on the news, which had been playing in the background this whole time. Unfortunately, there wasn't much that caught my interest, mostly just the usual about weather and whatnot. And for an average citizen like myself, even the sensational news about corrupt politicians and celebrities caught having affairs wasn't really that exciting or relevant. Since there was nothing of interest on the TV, I decided to see if Kasumi had decided to stop acting like a child yet. But right when I was about to shift my focus back toward her,
され死亡
ooh. Whoa, hold the phone. What'd they just say?
昨夜遅く諏訪原市の公園で男性の他殺死体が発見され同死刑は殺人事件として捜査を
Holy shit, the gas
Oh.
leaks.
Oh, the gas leak.
Wait, had there really been a homicide in Suahara?
現在のところ通り魔的なものであるとの見解がなされておりそれというのも被害者の頸部が切断されるという
I know what
的な
happened.
犯行であ
Let's
る
see.
I know what happened.
What
The
happened?
slasher flash the gas. Flash the tank of gas. You know.
Yep. It was a
Cal-
guillotine.
uh,
凶器の断定はまだできていないとのことですがおそらくは鋭利な刃物日本刀もしくはそれに類する刃渡り60センチ以上の刀剣であるという説が有力視されていますなお被害者の男性は諏訪原市の会社員生野健二さん24歳であり
Kenji.
死因は頸部の切断による
I stared transfixed at the news report as it elaborated on the details, but the sound of a plate shattering shook me out of my trance. Kasumi must have dropped it. One could hardly blame her for being surprised. Here we were eating breakfast as usual, and all of a sudden this news starts going on about the gruesome details of a homicide. Suahara City Park, the site of the murder, was a place most residents were very familiar with as well. So Kasumi's reaction was very normal. The details of the incident, however, were far from normal. They said that the cause of death was decapitation. So in other words, his head was cut off. If there were no other wounds on the body, then the act must have been carried out swiftly. Maybe the culprit got the guy as they were walking by each other, or snuck up on him from behind. Or they could have knocked the victim out first. I couldn't be sure of the exact details, but the murder weapon was a sharp blade like the newscaster had said. It seemed safe to say that the victim had been beheaded in one clean strike. You need nice superhuman strength in order to pull something like that off. The culprit would have had to be some sort of giant bodybuilder, and the guy like that walking around with a katana or something would definitely attract attention. Yet according to the newscaster, there were no reports of anyone suspicious in the area at around the time of the murder. So what? Had they set up a piano wire trap in advance or something? My hand shot to my neck. Here I was trying to come up with some realistic scenario to explain the murder. More accurately, I was trying to come up with an explanation that didn't involve that. I was trying to avoid thinking about the implement that one couldn't help but associate with beheading. I had seen it myself at the museum. Hell, I had even had a dream involving it the night before. The guillotine that had stood so imposingly amid the execution grounds in my dream. I could still remember it severing my head in vivid detail. I had woken up to find that someone really had been decapitated. Was this just a coincidence? Just something I could laugh off as if not concerning me? After all, I had sinned the same girl in both real life and my dream. It was already apparent that the boundary between the two was thinner than we thought. Who could prove that what had happened in the dream couldn't also occur in reality? In other words, my dream had been prophetic.
もう行こう。遅刻しちゃうよ。
My man cannot see a white girl without a tragedy happening.
I know, right? I wonder if Kasumi, he says it's a normal reaction, but the way that she just froze up and that face that she made, I wonder if it wasn't just her reacting to the fact that there had been a murder, but if it was something that evoked some sort of related trauma that kind of put her in that state of shock, that temporary state of shock, reactivated that point, that place in her head. Kasumi was right. It wasn't healthy to keep going down this unrealistic line of thought.
分かった。着替えるから部屋戻っててくれ。
別に照れなくてもいいのに。
Especially because her emotional response was just as she was exposed to it. Now she's like back. So maybe it was kind of like a pointed trauma activate, like a trigger thing that put her back into a traumatic place.
うるさいな。それより。
はいはい。玄関使いでしょ。面倒だから嫌ですよ。とりあえず先に食器だけ片付けとくね。
Even our typical morning routine felt somehow strained.
ほら、もたもたしてない。さっさと行く。
But unlike me, Kasumi wasn't the type to keep moping around forever. It was business as usual as she stood in front of the apartment harassing me.
もう、なんで男のあんたが私より準備に時間かかるのよ。あ、それともあれかな。もしかしてお化粧してたりしたのかな。
殴るぞ、お前は。
Yeah, you see, he's like extremely insecure about this whole girl boy thing. Did no one ever tell her that it was rude to make fun of other people's appearances?
そっちこそ少しはシャレっ気くらいつけろよな。いつも汗まみれで竹刀ばっかり振ってるから男じゃなくて女にモテ。
It definitely feels like the cool guy, like the asshole cool guy thing is compensation for his insecurity.
喧嘩売ってるわけ。
先に売ってきたのはお前だろうが。
何よ。昔はそれがいいとか言ってたような気がするのに。
気がするだけかよ。
I sure as hell never said that.
だいたいあんただって女の子にモテ。
なくても別にいい。特にお前には。
ちょっと何これ。ほんと可愛くないですよ。
だから可愛くなくていいんだよ。あと、これってなんだ。これは物か。
Oh yes。この牧石野郎。
Oh yes. Brain cells were going to start dying if I continued this conversation. I didn't feel like being late for school the day after I got back from being in the hospital, so I urged Kasumi along.
ほら、行くぞ。
はーい。で、本当にコート着てきたんだね。まだそんなに寒くないのに。
今日は冷えるって言ってただろ。
そうだっけ。
They did, but I thought better of bringing up the news again.
俺、寒がりだしな。
And I'd rather people not see the patchwork mess I was wearing. I kept that last bit to myself. We walked for a bit until we hit a crossroads. This junction was in the heart of the city, so you could say that all the roads converged here and then split off again. The set was split neatly into blocks by the main streets crossing here, with the church and the hospital on the side facing the mountains and the park and the amusement park on the side facing the sea. As long as you started from here, it was impossible to get lost. I figured one might expect this sort of thing from a city known as a tourist destination like Suwahara. No one would bother visiting if it was impossible to make your way around. Of course, last night there had been a murder at the park on the seafront side of Suwahara, favored by tourists. Not exactly the sort of thing that's good for business. The police were probably already on the move looking for the killer. It would be best to walk around at night for the next few weeks. It would be best not to walk around at night for the next few weeks, in more ways than one.
レン。
Kasumi suddenly called out to me.
そっち方向違うよ。
は？
そっちは
Right. Of course.
悪い。
The fastest way to reach school is to cut through the park, so I had instinctively started walking in that direction. Thank God Kasumi had caught me. I had no intention of approaching a murder scene of my own volition.
久しぶりなんで道忘れたかも。よければ手とかは引いてくれると助かる。
あのね、バカな冗談言ってると本当に置いてくからね。もう。
No luck. I tried playing it off to lighten the mood, but all I managed to do was piss her off. In the end, though, Kasumi made sure I was following her the whole way to school. I decided I should express my gratitude by offering her some important advice.
お前、先に教室入れ。
は？
だから、俺のことはもういいよ。気にしないで、ほら、教室。
あんた何言ってんの？
わかんないかな。お前鈍いよ。
Yeah, great advice, man. Maybe I couldn't really complain about Kasumi being so open, but at times I wish she was a little more perceptive. It didn't even occur to her on the way here. Sometimes I just wasn't sure about this girl.
今俺と一緒に教室入ると、お前変な目で見られるぞ。
なんで？
なんでも何も。
I was already enough of an outcast to begin with. And now here I was coming back to school after spending 2 months in the hospital because I'd gotten in a huge fight with a classmate. It wasn't hard to predict what sort of response I would get.
そんなのと仲良くして変な噂立てられたくなかったら、ここは当たらず触らず。
It's very funny that he cares about her, but he cannot possibly afford to demonstrate that he gives a fuck about her well-being. So he presents his actually good advice on the worst way possible.
It is actually funny that he cares about her, but he doesn't think about her feelings
whatsoever. Because he can't drop the cool guy act, because it would make him look like a pussy. That's the way that he's thinking, I'm sure.
That's true.
But it's such a childish, like for him to think this way. I watched this video recently by a fellow YouTuber, Argon Bolt, about Gundam. And he was making a comment on some members of the fan base, and I think he said a very interesting phrase about like only children would decide to clamor for maturity in such a childish way, and I think that's kind of what he's looking like. He wants to be grown up and show that he doesn't give a fuck about anything, but it only comes off as him being a child that doesn't know what being a grown-up is, so he kind of overshoots. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Kasumi was the sort of person with a strong sense of justice, a rarity in this day and age.
ムカつくな。私そういう考え大嫌い。ほらね、一緒に行くよ。
That's the spirit. She grabbed my arm and started dragging me with her.
頼む。
She might have managed to make a nice entrance, emphatically swinging the door open and all, but things didn't go so well after that.
何かなこれ。
お前のテンションに引いてるってのが多分3割。
The other 70% went without saying. Unfortunately for Kasumi, the world didn't care if one was in the right or not. My first day at school in 2 months was off to a stellar start. As I had expected, I didn't exactly blend into the classroom. I caught my classmates casting sideward glances at me more than a few times. Kasumi didn't know when to quit, so she kept trying to get me involved with things, but I would rather she just had left me alone. It wasn't like I was getting off on the idea of being some aloof loner or whatever. Bullshit. But I wanted to take things easy for the time being. A form of rehab, in a sense. It was only natural for people to be wary around someone who had been involved in a violent incident, so I couldn't get angry at my peers. In fact, if they had started acting all friendly instead, I would feel more like they were afraid of me in some way. That wouldn't really sit well with me. I had never had any friends except for Kasumi, Shido, and Himuro in the first place. Nothing wrong with things staying the way they were. So Kasumi didn't need to keep up these futile efforts.
早く飯でも食ってこいよ。
だから、レンも一緒に行くの。
I had the honor of being invited to lunch by my childhood friend who just so happened to be a bit of a celebrity around school.
何が悲しくて一回も口聞いたことない女5人の集団に俺が混ざらなきゃならないんだよ。
それは誤解を解くために。
やめとけよ、バカらしい。
A group of girls, hell if I could remember any of their names, stood behind Kasumi gazing at me suspiciously.
あれ、友達だろ。だったら嫌がらせみたいなことしてやるなって。
なんでよ。レンも私の友達じゃない。
そう言ってくれるのありがたいんだけどな。
Was she trying to argue that a friend of a friend was a friend too, or something? Come on.
とにかくこういうのは最初が肝心なの。あんたもこれを機にマイナスイメージを払拭して。
And start making your daily life into something meaningful, blah blah blah. She just started going on with this stuff like she was straight out of some sort of after-school special. No, thank you.
It's actually funny that he just ignored the part of the chants. To start trying to make your school life something meaningful.
Right.
He transcribed it like blah blah blah.
Right. Which, you know, whatever. This guy reminds me of like my worst self when I was an edgy teenager. He has a lot of growing room.
I think everyone had this time, you know, have this kind of unpassed.
Right. I mean, everybody's an edgy teenager at some point.
Yeah.
Right. They think very highly of themselves, and then everything's confusing and annoying, so they make all these characters up. But there's room for growth, which is what's important. So, okay, I was seriously getting fed up here. And this is also part of the guide. I believe the right thing that we should do here is persuade her.
Try to persuade
her. Actually, wait. I should have saved. I should have saved there. Oh, I wish I could go back. Well, anyway.
Can we go back to?
We can't go back,
Oh no!
but I don't think we need to
Looks
save.
like we have to reload the save.
We can next time we'll just skip to the choice point and then we'll make the different choice. It'll be fine.
No problem.
みんな何も知らないで勝手なことばっかり言ってるから悔しいのよそういうのだからってほらちゃんとこっち見る
I really like the House and Wilson kind of relationship between these two. I don't know if you agree with me, Mapo, but I think there's a very strong kind of evocation of those two character archetypes. Kasumi grabbed my face from both sides. Clearly, I wasn't getting off that easily. The idea of trying to persuade her had probably been doomed from the start.
俺はこれでも俺なりに。
何よなんか文句あるわけ
Before I could respond with, of course I fucking do, my phone certainly barged into the conversation with a beep.
嘘レンにメールが来た
You actually got it done.
No way someone actually cares about you other than me.
Oh, that's sad.
That's brutal, dude. What sort of reaction was that? I thought Kasumi was supposed to be sticking up for me, not treating me like some sort of outcast herself. I shook off and looked at my phone screen.
どうしたの
いや悪いなかすみ
あ
戦略があったのを忘れてた
ちょっと待ってよあこらレン
飯はまた今度誘ってくれよ
I slipped past her and offered some parting remarks as I entered the hallway. I cast a glance to the side, only to find Kasumi's friends still staring at me. They didn't need to conspicuously avert their eyes as soon as they noticed I was looking at them. Jeez. See, it's just as I said, people's preconceived notions didn't go away that easily. And honestly, people weren't exactly mistaken in their perception of me. Yeah, I'm real fucking dangerous, actually. I'm really dangerous. They should be scared of me, bro. Yeah, so trying to clear things up or whatever was a ridiculous idea to begin with.
Yeah.
There was no need to expend a bunch of effort only to end up making things awkward for everyone involved. Like I was trying to tell her earlier, I didn't try to be considerate in my own way, since Kasumi had problems understanding the nuance of delicate situations like this. Well, he says that. He says he doesn't care, but then he keeps trying to justify this behavior to himself in his mind, which betrays that he does, in fact, care, and that he doesn't actually, this doesn't come naturally to him at all. So I wasn't happy with her trying to give me shit about it. Congratulations on getting out of the hospital. School is lonely without you. How are you feeling? There's some things I'd like to talk to you about, so I'll be waiting on the roof. By the way, no one else is around. Just the two of us. Yeah. Just the two of us? Just me and Fuji. Hurry on up. Himuro. Oh. The game crashed.
Oh shit.
Holy shit.
Cool.
It couldn't handle just the two of us.
Just the two of us. We can
We
make
can
it
make
every
it
try.
if we try.
I don't know what the fuck was up with that. I don't know why the game crashed. This is a reading club first. The game actually crashed, and we're gonna have to do a little bit of loading. Sorry again to everybody. For
Okay, we can save now the.
Yeah, I'll
the
save
option.
at the choice.
We're gonna put some kind of funny or interesting image, so you won't get bored.
Dick pic.
俺は別に
Dick
周りの
pic.
評判の
Oh, okay. So it seems that the game didn't save
嘘どうした
いや
past the point of the choice,
飯は
so I can't skip. But here it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Now it hasn't. Now it didn't crash. Okay. What was I supposed to say to this? Looked like she hadn't changed a bit. I wasn't sure whether I should just have a long sigh or start laughing. As a senior, surely she had something better to do than messing with her underclassmen. I really couldn't figure that part of her out. Give me a sec. Boop. Okay. Like, true. I couldn't picture her getting stressed out over college entrance exams or job hunting, so maybe that sort of carefree approach did suit her, but let's just say that she took things too far. Well, anyway, the roof, huh? It would be a little rude to just turn down her offer, and besides was looking for a way to give Kasumi the slip anyway. I think this is funny, on the topic of him being a try-hard, edgy teenager that wants to play adult. Himuro sends him this message that's all lovey-dovey and like treating him like a pet, which is what Kasumi does. But because she's older, he's okay with it, while Kasumi, he's not okay with because she's the same age. So he thinks that Himuro is more mature, and, whatever. And he thinks he should be associating with her instead. It's kind of a funny betrayal of that part of his persona. I climbed up the stairs and threw open the door to the roof. It was December. To put it simply, the roof was murderously cold at this time of year. Before I had taken my 2-month leave of absence, there were still plenty of students eating lunch up here every day, but obviously no one was crazy enough to. Oh, yeah, I guess there was someone crazy enough to come to keep using the roof. I heaved a sigh as I searched for her. And there she was, sitting on a bench by the fence and munching on a sandwich. Why did she pick the coldest spot on the entire roof to sit at, anyway? Cultural note, those barriers that they have on the roof there with the inward turned kind of roofing to them, they're anti-suicide railings, because students have a habit of jumping from rooftops in Japan. So they build this railing this way with a kind of turned inward thing so that they have a more difficult time climbing over and doing it.
Senpai.
I didn't get a response, so I went ahead and sat down. Rhea. It's a weird name for a Japanese person. I had been sitting next to her for nearly 10 seconds now, but she hadn't even looked in my direction, let alone try to strike up a conversation. I have a theory about Rhea, but I'll talk about it later, at the end of the episode. She didn't fall asleep, right?
先輩
寒い。凍った。温めて。
Damn. The Riz. For a moment, I considered just getting up and leaving. This was Rhea Himuro. The senior who had happened to be one of my few friends.
それ、暖かそうね、藤井君。貸してくれると、私嬉しい。っていうか、むしろ貸せばか。
Hand it over, bitch.
Hand it over, bitch!
The Riz.
The Riz, bruh. This was about what you could expect from her.
正直、ちょっと甘く見てた。天気予報もなかなかやるね。
Damn.
それで藤井君、私とても寒いんだけど。
どうでしょうね。
For all her claims that she was freezing, she wasn't shivering one bit, and her expression seemed more or less normal. I couldn't be sure of her intent, but she was eyeing my coat. That stare of hers was colder than any weather.
ちゃんと後で返すなら。
Thanks to Kasumi's sewing job, my uniform underneath was looking more than a little fancy, but I didn't feel like getting into some sort of war of endurance. I stood up and took off my coat.
なんだったら、二人で着る？こう、仲良く肩寄せ合って。
遠慮しときますよ。
I made my stance clear and stuck the coat on her.
What do you mean you pass?
Bro,
You crazy, bro?
you need to understand he's a 6-year-old child. He's in 3rd grade. Girls are gross. And he does not want anything to do with them. He's too cool for girls, bro.
Is this the Zarathustra? Because I feel Nietzsche in him, bro.
Dude, that's so real, bro. That's so real. Oh god.
暖かい。
That's uber mesh.
藤井
That's some
君は
ubermensch.
優しいね。
That's some ubermensch behavior.
そっちはどう？寒くない？
Shut the fuck up, god.
暖かいって言ったら嘘ですね。
じゃあ遠慮しないで。ほら、入りなさい。
Himura flapped the hem of her coat, gesturing for me to join her. Does she just want to screw with me like this all day long?
で、俺と何を話したいんです？
さりげなく無視するのね。まあいいけど、まずは退院おめでとう。綾瀬さんにはもう言われた？
おかげさまで昨日しっかり。
じゃあデートした？
おかげさまでそこそこしっかり。
そう、よかった。
Exactly what part of that was good, it was completely lost on me.
まあ、
Yeah, fuck girls, bro. Fuck them. She offered me an egg sandwich. What was I, a dog being rewarded for a trick?
しっかり食べないと大きくならない。苦労するよ。
What does this
いろいろと
mean? What the fuck? What the fuck do you... This bitch is like playing some advanced psyops. This is completely inscrutable behavior. She's just saying non sequiturs.
Oh. Man, I don't know about you, but an egg sandwich is an egg sandwich, if you know what I mean.
I don't know what you mean, and I don't want to know. Actually, I feel like that is a very sinister statement.
健全な精神は健全な体に宿るらしいし、早く真人間になりなさいね。
What is this, man?
Oh.
She was really laying it on today. Apparently, I didn't even qualify as a real human being. Bruh, this is brutal. Sorry, but I felt confident that I was better at this whole human thing than she was, at least.
何？
Honestly, you might not be wrong. She does feel like an alien.
思ったことは言いなさいよ。そんなだから喧嘩になる。ユサ君ともどうせそうでしょ。食べてる？
Actually, she dropped a real one here, where she's confronting him directly on what we were talking about, of the dissonance between who he is and who he wants to show other people, right? And because he's not able to open up, because he doesn't feel like he can show any vulnerability, it gets him into altercations, and it makes him look like a fucking asshole.
一応
So she's dropping some truth bombs, but they're very occasional. I opened up the egg sandwich and gave it a few bites, offering a flippant reply in the process.
話したいことってのはそれですか？
そうって言ったら
微妙ですね。
I knew that it wasn't a great answer, but I gazed up at the sky. Why was everyone trying to lecture me like this as soon as I got out of the hospital? Was what I did really that worrying? Bro, you almost fucking died, for one, and you almost fucking killed the other guy. What do you mean, what was it? What? Like, okay, most people would consider my scuffle with Shiro to be far more than a mere fight, but it wasn't like I had been singled out for violence by a group or anything. I could understand people who I wasn't particularly friendly with going out of their way to avoid me or getting an earful from Kasumi, but I never expected Himuro of all people to go at it too.
It didn't even hurt that much, you know?
Yeah,
Just a fight.
Just like
Little
72
fight,
fractures and ruptured organs. It's fine. It's okay.
Yeah.
All the bones of my body was broken, but oh, it's
Yeah,
fine.
this is just another day in the park. I'm that
先
cool.
輩に説教ってのは似合いませんね。
He really does feel like House. House gets all fucked up and destroyed and addicted, and he's like, this is all fine.
そっち系は霞だけで足りてますよ。あいつが二人もいたらマジで胃に穴が開く。
How the main reason I came up here was to get away from her bitching.
苦労人だね。
おかげさまでね。
I love her. She cuts right through his bullshit. I dropped my shoulders inside. Himuro resumed eating her sandwich as if nothing had ever happened. That is such a... You sure have gone through a lot, haven't you? It's such a beautiful line. Because it gets exactly at the problem. He's making out the being cared for by a friend to be this huge suffering that he has to endure. Like, this is the most ridiculous shit ever. I love that she doesn't let it go through at all. And states it in the way that makes him look the most stupid that he possibly could. That's beautiful. I dropped my shoulders inside. Himuro had resumed eating her sandwich as if nothing had ever happened. I guess that was about what I expected from her. If I had tried to describe her, she was like a ghost. She possessed a certain indefinite nature, like she wasn't concerned with the events of the world around her. And at the same time, she would occasionally act up as seen earlier. The way she kind of kept her distance was similar to my own position on things, so I did get along with her better than I did Kasumi. That's why the two of us had managed to become friends.
さっきのはちょっと綾瀬さんの真似してみたの。君、めんどくさそうな顔しながらまんざらでもなさそうだし。そういうのでも似合わないならやめようかな。そんなに私変だった？
そりゃあね、だいぶ。
How are you supposed to react when the person lecturing you seemed like they were talking to thin air?
で、本当のところは何のようです？まさか霞のモノマネしたかっただけでもないでしょう。いや、下手したらあり得るけど。
うん。まあよってほどじゃないんだけど、聞きたいことが一つだけ。
She cast me a sideward glance. Her tone as flat as ever.
君とユサ君、どっちが勝ったの？結構話題になってるのよね。月額最強決定戦。今のところ64でユサ君有利。でも復学してきたのは君だけだから、そのあたり揺れてるね。
I did take Himuro for the type to get in on fads like this. Who won, me or Shiro? Well, if you took that to mean who was the stronger one, then...
俺ですよ。
So true.
本当に？
So true, brother.
嘘ついてるとでも？
Yes.
さ、ただユサ君に聞いても同じことは言いそうだから。
She knows. She I love Himuro.
She knows.
I love Himuro. Yeah, he might have. No, scratch that. He definitely would have.
怖い顔。やだね。 これだから男の子は
Oh, I love her.
勝ったの負けたのそういうのがそんなに大事肩こらないかなプレッシャーだよ
She looks right through him. The whole trying to be a fucking man at the cost of being a human being thing.
聞いてきたのは先輩でしょうに。
そうだけどそうだったごめんなさいじゃあ質問を変えようかどうしてユサ君と喧嘩したの
Because he was a bitch.
答えたくない
そうですね。
I don't wanna answer.
It was something I was willing to discuss with others. It wasn't something I was willing to discuss with others. Himuro was the one who had found Shiro and me passed out up here and called an ambulance for her, so in that sense I was indebted to her, but that didn't really apply to this. Himuro sighed.
まあ三角関係のもつれとかそういうお手軽いネタじゃないのは察するけどね君とユサ君そんなジャンルのキャラじゃないし綾瀬さんモテそうに見えないし
She didn't exactly mince words with that one. I figured it would be best not to try to argue, though. Shiro and I weren't the type to get into fights for wholesome reasons like that. And indeed, Kasumi wasn't popular. At least not with us.
そんな君たちがなんでか友達だったのが不幸の始まりだったのかな実は私前からこうなるような気がしてたよだから神様は性格悪いなって思ってた今度一発君の代わりに殴っとこうか遠慮しないで善意だから
そりゃどうも。
I love her energy. Like 60% of what she says is completely nonsensical, and then 40% is the truest shit I've ever heard. Not exactly the sort of thing someone who lived in a church should be saying, but I didn't exactly feel obligated to her, to stop her. If she wanted to punch out Jesus, then maybe she could be my guest, as long as I wasn't the one receiving divine punishment over it anyway.
だいたい君に喧嘩なんて似合わないよ怪我とかしたらみんな悲しむ
That's a deep one.
うちのシスターなんてきっとそっとするんじゃないかな
シスター？
She mean the nun at the church? I'd only met her a few times before, but she was really something else. To say that she had model-like proportions would be an understatement. To put it simply, horny teenager time. Let's go. Someone like her working as a nun would be a great loss to the world. I wouldn't mind giving Jesus a sucker punch or two myself over that one.
名前何でしたっけ？
シスターリザ青い瞳のボインボイン F カップ
Boing boing.
Bem, bem, F cup.
F cup.
That's big.
ちなみに私は B カップ
TMI.
そのうち大きくなるかもしれない
TMI is too much information.
This, I think, is the perfect moment.
So real. Do you like them when they're like 60% nonsense, 40% real shit?
I mean, why, Ren? Why must you be this lucky?
Well, the house was also gifted with Cuddy, and he did all that he did, so, you know. The urge to be an edgy teenager far outweighs the ability of a human being to recognize his place in the world. I kept quiet.
You know,
Oh, go on.
now, after witnessing this, I don't believe in justice anymore. Where's the fairness in this?
There is no fairness. You need to remember your own days as Ren Fuji, when you did shit like this and cringe. Humanity really loses all of its sense when it doesn't grow up. When it's between being a happy child and a well-balanced adult. It's quite sad. I kept quiet. There was no sense in crushing her dreams.
で、その F カップさんは元気ですか？
B カップは興味ないの
それはとりあえず
Damn,
ノ
bruh.
ーコメントで。
That's so real. I rolled up the wrapping paper for the egg sandwich I had been eating and tossed it into the pocket of the coat Himuro was wearing. Not missing a beat, she proceeded to hand me a tomato sandwich.
彼女今寝込んでるよ。
風邪ですか？
そうじゃなくて。
She took out another sandwich. What the fuck? Where is she keeping all these sandwiches anyway? And then with the same unwavering blank expression on her face, she dropped a bombshell.
殺人事件見ちゃったから。
Oh shit.
ニュース見てない？公園で殺人事件。首ばっさり、血がドバー。怖いね。私も食欲なくなるよ。
She says as she munches on the tomato sandwich. I called it. Whatever. That wasn't the issue here.
見たって、つまり犯人を？
そっちじゃなくて、やられた方。
死体を？
第一発見者。私もね。
She nodded casually. If this was true, we were talking about some serious shit. This is the sort of thing that can traumatize someone for life.
おかげで私、一晩中警察で事情聴取。リザはあんなだから先に返しておいたけど、大丈夫かな？
それより、先輩は平気なのか？
私は寝不足なだけ。カツ丼くれるかなと思ったけど、あれってドラマの中だけなんだね。
Yeah, she's gotten a little disturbing now. This isn't normal.
どうしたの藤井君？変な顔して。
Like it's okay to be aloof and weird and whatever about day-to-day life things, but I feel like if you can stomach and not even really bat an eye at a fucking beheaded corpse covered in its own excrement in a park, then I don't know. She was the weird one here. I mean, I'd always thought she was a little off. But...
もしかして本当に話したかったのはそれなんですか？
どうかな。話の流れで思い出したから言ったんだけど、もしかしたらそうかもしれない。ねえ私、愚痴っていいかな？
まあいいですけど。
Murder case. There are a few topics less suitable for mealtime. Honestly, it wasn't really something I wanted to hear about either. Unfortunately, I couldn't avoid feeling curious about the matter. I couldn't seem to rid myself of the thoughts about that dream. I decided to go ahead and listen to what Himuro had to say.
11時過ぎだったかな。あそこの夜景が好きだからよくリザと見に行くの。いつもはカップルばっかりで、たまに時間とか出るんだけど、昨日はなぜか誰もいなくて。思えば嫌な感じがしてたんだよね。寒いのに生暖かいっていうか、ちょっと変な雰囲気で。あの時に
Himuro began her story in an uncharacteristic hint of self-derision in her voice. The park she was talking about wasn't the sort of place housewives took their kids to. It was a seaside park that offered a view of the opposite shore and its various attractions, like the sky-high tower, the amusement park, shopping mall, resort hotel, and so on. As such, it was generally utilized as a date spot, teeming with people late into the night. It would seem that that was not the case last night, however.
橋のたもとあるじゃない。ほら、よく君とユサ君がバイクで遊んでたところ。あそこって不意に暗くなるんだよね。地元の人間でもあまり知らないような場所。最初に気づいたのはリサの方。彼女が言うにはスプレーかと思ったらしいよ。でも実際はそうじゃなくて。
A wall dyed in red paint, sticky, gelatinous torrent of foul-smelling.
私の第一印象はコルク抜いたばかりのシャンパンかな。少し離れたところに転がってたよ。首って結構飛ぶんだね。それに血もいっぱい出るんだ。
Blood made up about 8 to 10% of a person's total weight. For an adult male, that would have meant about 5 to 6 liters. It was no stretch to say that they had come across a literal sea of blood.
よく失神とかしなかったですね。
女の方が血に耐性があるんだよ。あといざという時の度胸もね。とにかくそのまま帰るわけにはいかないから警察に電話して家まで送ってもらおうと思ったんだけど。
任意同行を求められて朝まで事情聴取ですか。
そう失礼しちゃうね。丸腰の女二人にあんなことができるわけないのにさ。
She meant cleaving off someone's head in an instant like that, according to the news.
日本刀かそういう感じの刃物なんじゃないかって。
そうらしいね。だから今博物館を調べてるんじゃないのかな。何かなくなった展示品がありはしないか、もしくはどれかに血痕があったりするんじゃないのか。
I wanted to laugh at the idea off, but the circumstances made it difficult.
その推理ちょっと漫画的な気がしますけど。
Let's be real here. Isn't it fucking weird that Himuro just so happened to be at the crime scene when it happened, and that she was completely unfazed by it, and the day before she orchestrated this date to send it into the museum where there was a blade exhibition, from which very likely someone took a blade to kill this person. Doesn't this feel weird?
It does kind of feel weird, but I don't know. Why is she revealing this?
Well, I wouldn't know why she would. I wouldn't know why she would do this if she was behind this all. But there's a lot of pieces here that fit together, you know?
Yeah.
She had a point.
そのあたり、藤井君はどう思う？
どうって。
何か思い当たることはなかったの？
Look, she's prodding at it. It's kind of weird. It feels like she has insight into the situation. Even overlooking the ridiculous example, I couldn't tell if she was being serious or not.
藤井君？
いえ、特に。
She's pressuring him to answer.
そう、ちょっと残念。
It feels like she's trying to get him somewhere. What she would only know to do if she was part of the planning of the scenario. As ever, her disinterested tone was at odds with her words. Himuro resumed eating. I simply looked up at the sky. A grisly decapitation. This was the sort of abnormal, gruesome event that would give you goosebumps just thinking about it. Anyone living in Suahara must have been scared out of their wits. After all, murders this bizarre rarely ended with just one victim. For all we knew, another body could turn up tonight. And I might have been involved.
実際、みんな落ち着かない感じだね。きっとしばらく部活とかは中止になるよ。もし周りの子たちが藤井君を過剰に怖がってるような感じなら。
俺は別にそんなことは
そうなの？じゃあどうして元気ないかな？
Yeah, she's totally manipulating him into something here.
もしかして綾瀬さんと喧嘩でもした？
違いますよ。
嘘ばっかり。
She threw the coat she had been wearing over my head.
ダメだよ。好きな子には優しくしないと。物騒なんだし、君が守ってあげなくちゃ。じゃあね、藤井君。コートありがとう。あと、本当は、私も少し怖かったから、おかげで気が紛れたよ。
Okay, I have 180. I don't like Himuro. She's creepy and weird, and I am positive that she has something to do with all of this. And I think she's playing with it in to get him to do something, to get control over him. Himuro gave me a rare grin. She seemed just a little embarrassed. If she acted like this all the time, she'd establish a fan base in no time. She's conditioning him. She's giving him what he wants, so that she can continue to be in his life. Well, that aside.
俺の好きな女とか勝手に決めないでくれますか？俺は別に霞なんか。
はい、それも嘘。とにかくいい加減裏に回る癖を直しなさい。もうユサ君はいないんだから。じゃあね。
With that, Himuro left the roof behind. I heaved a sigh. In the end, I was really just lectured the whole time. I was kind of miffed. It was cold as hell on the roof, but I had lost the will to return to class, so I decided to just skip. Apparently, I had fallen asleep at one point. When I opened my eyes, I saw...
Oi, oi.
Couldn't believe myself. It was already completely dark out. I was lucky I didn't get sick. Maybe it was true what they had said about idiots not catching colds. I rose from the bench I had been lying on. Checked the time on my phone, 6:30 p.m. Wasn't terribly late, but seeing how it was winter, it was already pitch black outside. In the distance, I could see the lights on the school offices.
So this is the moment in which he sees Archer and Lancer fighting, right?
Right. Exactly. The idea of being caught by a teacher wasn't a... Actually, he's the other student. Shiro is the one who's seeing Archer and Lancer. He's the other student that makes them stop. The idea of being caught by a teacher wasn't appealing. I had enough lectures for one day. I headed back to the classroom to pick up my stuff, only to find... You moron. Go and get held back a year for all I care. Ah! A lovely note from Kasumi taped to my desk. But she had no reason to be concerned. My grades were better than hers, and since this was a college prep school, they were willing to turn a blind eye to most things as long as you did well on tests. That said, the incident with Shiro might have not fallen under most things, but setting that aside. I tore the note off the desk, rolled it up, and launched it at the trash can. I totally sunk the free throw. I left the classroom after paying my respects to Kasumi's rancorous missive. The school was more than a little creepy at night. No wonder so many people reported ghost sightings during the summer months. I wasn't a fan of ghosts myself. If I had to say why, it was because they were immune to physical attacks. Only in certain RPGs. You try punching them, kicking them, whacking them with a bat, whatever, it didn't do a damn thing. Meanwhile, they were able to mess with you all they wanted. You could hardly call that playing fair. Sure, I wasn't the only one who found that a bit unsophisticated. And as I was walking down the hall, entertaining myself with silly ponderings on ghosts, something outside the window caught my eye. A man in red and a man in blue fighting each other.
Kendojo?
The lights were on. Himuro said that club activities would probably be suspended, which meant...
Kasumi-ka.
I couldn't think of any other explanation. Surely she wasn't trying to develop some new technique to try to take on the murder on the loose, right? Unfortunately, I couldn't just leave her here now that I knew. What Himuro had told me earlier were still on my mind too, I guess. Setting aside the issue of whether or not she really needed me escorting her, we took the same path back home anyway. Found just the person I was expecting to find in the dojo, but...
これミスったかな
I had come here thinking we'd go through our usual routine, with me giving her a hard time and sidestepping her subsequent scolding. Kasumi, however, was clearly not in the playful mood right now. When it came to kendo, she didn't cut corners or make compromises. She handled her bamboo sword with a quiet dignity, with nary a trace of her usual rambunctious demeanor to be found. Staring at the steadfast expression, I found myself starting to understand why the younger girls swooned over her. It felt like it would be wrong somehow to call out to her, so I just leaned against the shoe rack and watched her practice. I wasn't very familiar with kendo, but if memory served, that pose was the Seigun Kamae, one of the most basic techniques. She sure was diligent. Here was someone who'd placed in national tournaments, staying late in order to practice her fundamentals. Well, I guess that was probably part of why she was so strong. I had been watching her for a few minutes now. She had probably been practicing for much longer, of course, but her form hadn't wavered a bit. It was to mind the image of a Buddhist priest meditating. Was this what they called clearing one's mind? As I watched her, I suddenly wondered if she had some specific reason for going out of her way to maintain a steady presence of mind like this. I mean, that was kind of the idea of martial arts in general, but...
本当に強いやつは何もしなくたって強いんだよ
I recalled what Shido had once said while watching one of Kasumi's matches.
最初から強いやつにはリハも稽古も必要ない武道は弱いやつが強くなろうとする手段で だから精神論が幅利かすのさ。礼に始まり礼に終われって、そういう具合に元が弱いから力に耐性ないんだろうな。自分を律するのが最優先で、それができなきゃ破綻する。哀れすぎるぜ。
And you can see the shadow thing
まあ仕
again
方な
with
いとは思うけど、
the fact that he just lets all of the assholery out and all of the character that then only mildly puts on.
つまり霞はそっち系だ。背伸びしてるあたり可愛いけど、生まれつきじゃないから無理してる。誰かさんとは違うのさ。まったく、なんでこんなことになったのかね。ウサギちゃんに夢見せたのはどこのドイツだなあ、レンちゃん。
Well, he sure has a deterministic view on the matter.
Oh, he does. And that's the thing that's interesting to me. Ren doesn't want to give him space because he's afraid of this, right? He knows that this is weird and bad and kind of, you know. But at the same time, the persona that he's built is so evocative of Shido. Like, he idealizes this type of character that just like lets all of the shadow out and doesn't give a fuck about any sort of decency or empathy, right? Which is interesting to me. I don't know. Like, at the same time, maybe because he's a teenager, he's like enamored with the edge of the shadow. But at the same time, he knows that letting it loose ends up in that destructive, kind of wild, monstrous thing that happened between him and Shido on the rooftop. And so he can't commit fully to the act while his conscience is tugging at him, you know?
Yeah. Well, it certainly seems weird for him to say such things. Especially considering the author from which comes many of the themes this book is trying to develop. No.
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit.
Yeah, never mind. I didn't say anything important.
Well, then again, this is Shido's perspective, and Shido is the shadow. He's the foil, right? So it isn't necessarily the message that the author is trying to give on to the reader. I think it's definitely supposed to be gross that Shido is coming off as a fascist here, you know, as a social Darwinist, right?
I just find it funny that he is saying such things.
Right.
Because, if you have basic Nietzsche knowledge, you know that physical strength is not something that you should revel in. It's the willpower of oneself that is the most important thing.
Well, I think
so Kazami in this context would be the superior one.
Right. I think that might be part of the theme, actually, that they're setting up about growth, about growing up, the Bildungsroman, right? The story of the child becoming an adult. Because Ren is at this crossroads between being a child and a grown-up. He sees the appeal of being a grown-up. He wants to get there, but he doesn't know how to yet. Meanwhile, and the women in his life are grown-ups. They care for other people. They have this idea of justice. They have morals, and they have discipline. And they stand up for what they believe. Versus Shido is kind of the unfettered child. He's the rebel, dominated by emotion, obsessed with superiority, and extremely egotistical, right? He's the person undeveloped, the most primal expression of the animal that the human is, while the adult is the taming. Being an adult is taming the animal, right? And so, like, there's the devil and the angel on his shoulder, that are each trying to influence the path that he's going to take as he rounds out his character and steps into adulthood, I think.
Yeah, I can see that Shiro's character is one of jealousy and grossness.
Right.
Because it just seems that he's trying to diminish what she's trying to do, like improving yourself. Nah.
Right. He's shaming her to assert that he's better. Right. He needs to put her down to put on this image of him being superior. He needs to make it a competition.
It's just the truth that he has said. It is his morals, let's say it. It's not his morals, it's just his standards. What he believes.
Yeah, it seems like he represents more of the wrong image that people get from the Ubermensch.
Right.
You know, the person who does not care about morals or norms and feel superior to everyone. That's like the wrong image of the Ubermensch instead of what the Ubermensch actually
It's supposed to represent. Right.
Yeah.
Which is more, I feel like,
It isn't-
similar to Kasumi in the sense of cultivating meaning in existence. Right. In
Yeah, and
using that.
in speaking exactly about that, when he makes the comment that martial arts trail upon the superiority of physical strength, it just seems nihilistic
Right.
to even try.
Yeah, you shouldn't
No.
even try. You're either born with it or you aren't. There's no point.
Yeah, such a nihilistic comment. Just don't try martial arts. If you're not born with natural physical superiority, you get nowhere.
Well, it's
just
the
useless.
Actually, he doesn't say you don't get nowhere. He just say it is much more difficult, and the reality is, it is like saying it is much easier to allow you. I guess no, this comparison is terrible. Anyway, he doesn't say it is impossible. Just say it is much difficult to the person who doesn't have
I feel like he
talent
implies
or
that there's no meaning to it.
genetics for it. Say.
I don't know. I feel like he implies that there's no meaning to it. I feel from Shiro kind of the fascist paradox of being childlike in the sense of wanting to rebel against the world and construct enemies and fight, but at the same time in enforcing through the rebellion, enforcing like an inescapable order, a hierarchy of the strong over the weak. In a way that's kind of evocative, I think, of Lucifer in Paradise Lost, that wants to rebel because he feels like he's better than God. Not to empower the revolution isn't to empower people to escape from order, is to enforce the true order of nature as he perceives it, right? It's interesting. I don't know. I thought this is cool. I still remember the grin on his face as he nudged me with his shoulder. In retrospect, maybe I should have decked him right then and there.
お前責任取ってやれよ。そもそもあんなことやったから。
Oh, give me a break. Where the hell did he get off trying to lecture me about this? Whose fault did he think it was, anyway? Pissed me off hearing that sort of thing coming from the mouth of a risk-obsessed psychopath like him. He needed to realize that he was nothing more than a fucking dumbass who liked complicating things for the hell of it. That was why I...
あれレン
What did he
Wait,
do?
wait. I'm sorry. I got lost for a bit. Did he imply that the reason for the fighting that occurred between them was?
No, I think he was... This is a memory of when Kasumi was in a tournament. And he's trying to say that the reason Kasumi is doing this is because of something Ren did. And Ren is trying to deny, he's in denial about being responsible for whatever it is that he did.
Okay.
But they haven't said what it is. So.
Oh.
Shit! What the hell was I doing?
どうしたのっていうか、いつからいたの？
ああ、悪い。ちょっと声かけづらくて。
I had to be out of my mind suddenly going on a trip down that particular memory lane. I pulled my fist out of the shoe rack, my ways wavering. This was beyond embarrassing.
その、一緒に帰ろうぜ。物騒だろう、一人だと。
どうしたのよ。変だよレン。珍しいよ。あんたがそんなこと言い出すなんて。
いや、夜道はおっかないからお前に守ってもらおうかな。
つまり何？あんたは自分が怖いから私にガードしてくれと？
その通り。
Kasumi snapped.
この軟弱者が！それでも男が恥を！あと今思い出した。あんた午後の授業サボったでしょ。どこ行ってたの？
屋上で寝てたんだけど。
は？屋上？信じらんない。何こいつ。呆れた。めまいがするよ。わかった。もういい。ちょっとそこで待ってなさい。着替えてくるから。
Kasumi stopped off into the changing room, and I could have sworn I heard the earth shake. She poked her head back out.
覗いたら奥義食らわすからね。
You can already see that there's a development to escaping from the edgy teenager thing when he does this of wanting to go back with her. He still can't admit that he wants to go because he wants to be with her to protect her, because he knows that she's scared to death of the murderer for some particular reason that we haven't explored yet. But it's progress. Shido wouldn't do it. Shido would just tell her to go fuck herself or something and go home. So there's that contrast. Bam, she slammed the door shut. Sigh. Well, at least this had turned out more or less like I had originally envisioned it. It seemed Kasumi was back to her usual self, if nothing else. Now I just needed to stop worrying about stuff in my past. I wonder if there's going to be a part of the growing up metaphor in the novel is going to be changing the character of his love for stagnation. Here, it feels like he doesn't want things to change because he's afraid of being exposed himself and being exposed to other people. Maybe if he lets himself be vulnerable to Kasumi, or if he lets Kasumi be vulnerable to him, or if he really even acknowledges his own vulnerability, it's going to change the perception that he has of himself and the perception that others have of him and he has of others. And he can't cope with that amount of change being invited into a life that's comfortable for him. Whereas the Nietzschean kind of ideal of loving changelessness is to be at peace with the world, right? And to appreciate that things happen because they happen, as opposed to being afraid of change in specific. So maybe that's going to play a part in his development. Maybe that's his arc.
それじゃあお世話になりました。
Kasumi thanked the dojo, locked it, and then headed my way.
お待たせ。どう？何か食べてく？
いや、せっかくだから霞が何か作ってくれよ。
でもそれだと遅くなるよ。
別にいい。どうも俺、他の料理が口に合わない。
She's so cute.
そうなの？
そう、昼飯は適当だったし腹減ってる。慣れないもんは食いたくないよ。 だから霞の料理がいい。
でも買い置きないし。
面倒か？だったら外食で我慢するけど。
いや、そうじゃなくて、そのなんか照れるね。参ったな。そういう風に言われると下手なもの作れないっていうか。
Kasumi squirmed about for a bit, but soon collected herself.
よし、だったら私頑張っちゃうよ。
頼むわ。
Alright.
Thank God she was so simple-minded. Afterward, we picked up some groceries at the supermarket and headed home together. It couldn't have been much later than 7 p.m., but there were surprisingly few people still out and about on the streets.
やっぱりみんな怖いんだね。
だろうな。
It's actually kinda scary to walk on the streets alone
Oh, for sure.
at this hour.
Especially if there's a murderer on the loose.
Yeah,
Uh,
but okay.
You'd have
There's
to
no
be-
cops, there's nothing.
right.
Okay.
You'd have to be crazy to want to go strolling about in a city where there had been a brutal murder the previous day. The smart thing to do would be stay inside with your doors locked tight. Thinking about it this way, Kasumi and I were being pretty careless going out at night like this, even if we were together.
先生もね、犯人が捕まるまでは
先生の
各自まっすぐ帰りなさいって。
What else would they say?
でもだけどお前なんで居残りなんかしてたんだよ。
それはなんかもう日課になっちゃってるもんだから、今更やめるのも半端だし。
Oh shit. Can you guys still see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh,
there-
she's on the grind, you know? It is like when you start the gym and you
Right.
can't stop.
それにほら、もしかしたら犯人逮捕とかできるかもしれないし。
Lamau. Lamafau.
You can stop it even if there is a mass murder.
こいつバカだとか思ってるでしょ。
Was she a psychic or something?
お前な、そういうことは公僕に任せとけよ。なんで一女子高生が体張らなきゃならないんだよ。
そこはほら、私正義の味方だし。
She's Shiro Emiya. That's the secret.
Yes.
Good for her.
前から思ってたけど、お前頭悪いよな。
何？ちょっとあんた失礼よ。
とにかく正義感もほどほどにしとけよな。
I didn't know what sort of person the murderer was, but it was probably safe to say that he was out of his mind if he was going around decapitating people. The average person would
No.
almost certainly struggle to maintain their cool when confronting a psychopath like that.
Know who she is.
Hmm.
She's the protagonist of Kebab.
Tokubabble, yeah, she's yeah.
血まみれの狂気持って似合うの笑
Yeah,
って。
yeah.
多分規制上げながら襲いかかってくるやつ相手にお前の剣道がちゃんと発揮できるかどうかは微妙だぞ。自信あるのか？
どうだろうね。確かにちょっと怖いかも。
だろ？
Most people have never had to fight for their lives, so it would only be natural to freeze up when thrust into a situation like that. Only experience or a natural predisposition for this sort of thing could help you there. Not that being experienced with or possessing a gift for life and death struggles would be a good thing, mind you.
とにかく物騒なこと考えるなよ。
Try not to
また
be the
稽古
hero.
続けるなら俺も一緒に残るから。
やだね。心配してくれてるの？
心配だよ。俺一人で帰るのマジ怖いし。
Fucking asshole.
あ、そうですか。いや、素直で結構だとは思うけどね。で
She'll
もさ、
try to look at the good way of it.
Right, right.
だいぶ前の調子が戻ってきたね。入院したばっかりの頃はなんだか幽霊みたいになっちゃってたけど。だからね、
Kasumi smiled softly, her expression feeling somehow mature.
今度何かあった時はちゃんと私に話してね。また前みたいに知らないところで無茶しちゃダメだよ。約束。
She stuck out her pinky.
ほら、
お前俺の母さんじゃないんだからさ。
そんなようなものじゃない。私に守ってほしいんでしょ。ね。
I wonder if it might not have been better to just go along with her.
善処するよ。
よろしい。
enough.
Kasumi grabbed my hand and forcefully intertwined our pinkies. Never thought I'd be engaging in a pinky swear at this age. Next time something happens, be sure to tell me about it. I didn't want more stuff than I felt comfortable, Wait, what? I didn't want more stuff that I felt uncomfortable talking about to happen myself. I was more than over that sort of thing. Unfortunately, I always seem to have bad luck keeping these sorts of promises. So this pinky swear instead seemed ominous to me, like it was a portent of some misfortune to come. I couldn't shake that feeling for the rest of the night. After eating dinner, I had strayed to bed, and as soon as I fell asleep, it began. The crimson dream of the guillotine. Indeed, the night was red. A beast lurked in the city. Most beasts were nocturnal in nature, so it was only natural the hunting of this one took place during the night. And thus the night was stained crimson, with fountains of blood, with dripping pieces of meat, with shattered bones, with the fading embers of life. Thus the beast satisfied its hunger, slaked its thirst, in an endless cycle of limitless gluttony. It continued devouring its prey. However, there was also those that hunted such beasts, or perhaps it would be more accurate to describe this kind of phenomenon as mutual predation instead.
Yeah.
A female voice. A beast in the form of a young woman spoke, a grim expression on her face. She was one of the hunters, but she was fundamentally no different from her prey. Indeed, they were one and the same. They both had become beasts through the same obscene method, and took to the hunt for the same reasons. Two beasts of the same forest. If there was a difference to be found between them, it was their youth. But in this case, youth did not equate to inexperience. She had killed far more than the older beast before her. Thus, she had no intention of pursuing her prey at the current time. For now, she would simply step back and observe the situation, waiting for her prey to build experience and mature. She yearned for the day her prey's fangs would grow sharp enough that she could no longer manage them. Let it be said that she was not overestimating her own strength. This was her earnest desire. The hunt would be but a mere farce if her prey was feeble enough to fall to her alone. After all, every one of the hunters was a monster, forged in the flames of hell. Her prey needed to be strong enough to hold its ground against all of them, together.
まあ難しそうな話だけど
Her words earlier did not speak of her prey's arrival. Her comrades, the hunters, had arrived instead. And thus she understood. The odds of her prey managing to reach their level were so low that they might as well have been zero. Ooh. The girl from the opening.
Oh.
Wait.
It was so impacted that Mapo just dropped it.
Yeah, let me pause. So it's the girl from the opening. It looks like, or not from the opening, from the very tail end of the overture.
She looks kind of hot.
She's hot as fuck. Actually, there was no one to be seen in the area. Her comrades hadn't made their presence known through sight or sound, but she could feel them there. Even if one is asleep, he or she is likely to awaken if several people enter the room simply from sensing their presence. This was a similar phenomenon. The room that was Suahara City suddenly felt very cramped. If we posited that the density of a normal person's existence was 1, the density of 2 who had just arrived was more than 1,000. There could be no doubt that these monsters had devoured more than 1,000 human souls. These were man-eaters far beyond the level of any mere serial killer. They could no longer be called human in any sense of the word. But this was perhaps to be expected. It meant only that they had come prepared. They had made effective use of the past 60 years, it would seem. She had no trouble telling exactly who had arrived. Who could forget such tainted, such utterly abominable souls as theirs?
まったく
Before the words, "these are the 2 absolute worst," could pass through her lips, the girl remembered that the descriptor, "the absolute worst," applied to all of them just the same, and held her tongue.
ともあれようこそシャンバラへ
Shambhala.
ようこそお待ちしていましたよ
We
お二
have
人とも
Shambhala and the study guide, everybody. plug.
Okay.
A man garbed in a priest's cassock offered his greetings.
本当にお久しぶりです。米中尉にマレウス准尉。月並みですが、相変わらずのようですね。
Is it not time already?
It's not time. His voice was calm, even comforting. In contrast, the two beings receiving his greeting emitted a presence that could only be likened to that of a natural disaster. The sick stench of blood hung in the air. The pungent aroma of gunpowder filled the area. The entire world around them reeked with a rotten stench of murder. These were the odors of madness. These were the odors of calamity. These were the odors of demons. The beings gathering atop this bridge were without exception utterly removed from the constraints of normalcy. One of the two guests, a young man, sneered at the priest's words.
相変わらずってことは昔のまま進歩ねえって言いたいのかよクリストフ。言葉選ばねえと死ぬぞてめえ。
The man's language could hardly be called refined, but he spoke with a grin. The priest returned his own faint smile. The man's skin was fair, too fair, to the point of being inhumanly pale, as if he was cut from wax. However, he did not give off an aura of weakness or sickliness. Far from it. He possessed a certain limber poise, almost reminiscent of a python or other great reptile. In contrast,
ごきげんよう神父様。あなたは本当に変わってないわね。
She's a devil.
少し怠けすぎ
I
なんじゃない
must
かしら。
disclose the statistical fact that this character won the character poll for best character in the Irae. When
Oh, she isn't. She definitely is.
when
Oh,
that
I
happened.
know why she is the one. Oh, oh.
Or not best. I should say the crowd favorite character. She was at the end of
Do
it
you
all.
know why she is?
I know
why
exactly
she
why
is?
she is, but you know.
Okay.
The sweet voice that resonated next belonged to a young woman every bit as charming as her voice would suggest. She looked completely unfit to the sinister place, and in that sense she could have been said to give off the strongest impression of any of the creatures gathered atop the bridge. She served as an excellent example of the old adage that every rose had its thorns.
私はしばらく陰性していたものでしてね。まあ怠けているのは今に始まったことでもなし、一応それなりの理由もありますが、説明いらねえよ。知った中だ。堅苦しいのはやめようぜ。俺が知りたいのは一つだけだ。今シャンバラには誰と誰が入ってる？レオンハルト、ゾーネンキント、バビロンにトバルカイン。そしてあなたたちの計6名ですよ、米中尉。なぜ？年寄りが出しゃばるなと怒られたのですよ。
The man's pale visage twisted in confusion. The girl, on the other hand, seemed to understand what the priest had meant.
クリストフ、あなたさっきレオンハルトって言ったわね。それはバルキュリアの抜け番かしら。
ええ、あなた方も面識はあるでしょう。あのお嬢さん、どうしてなかなか大したものになりましたよ。
へえ。
The two of them broke out into broad smirks. Fascinating, most fascinating, a force to be reckoned with. Then by all means...
二人とも。
The priest, perhaps sensing the building uneasy atmosphere, continued with an authoritative tone.
分かっているとは思いますが、今黒煙卓に空きを作るわけにはいきません。それでは11年前の繰り返しです。たとえ新参でも未熟者でも黄色い列島であろうと。
Oh man, Nazi time with the racism there.
わかりますね。
Yikes. Real yikes.
それはもう分かってるわよ、当然じゃない。相変わだからここはせっかく女同士なんだし、あの子のことは私に任せていただきません？
いいじゃねえか。あんたもあんたで暇じゃねえだろ。これで残ってるのはシュピーネだけだが、あいつはいつ来る？彼はもうしばらくかかるでしょう。私が。
何それ、気になる。
おいマレウス、言ったろ、別にいいじゃねえか。大公殿が腹黒いことやっててくれりゃ、こっちもいろいろ手間が省ける。俺らは
掃除っていう いうか狩りでしょ。メルクリウスのクソ野郎が代理をよこしているんじゃなかったかしら。
順位副首領閣下に対する不敬な物言いはあまり感心しませんね。
The priest reproached the girl's choice of words, but his tone made it clear that he was doing it out of no more than mere formality. This Mercurius was clearly rather unpopular, but at the same time it did not seem as if they were making light of him. Quite the opposite, in fact. They spoke of him with disgust, even with a hint of fear. This was a man so despised that even his comrades shunned his very existence.
ともあれ副首領閣下は名役に
Of
して
course,
ない
this is
それを使わしているはずです。あなた方はまず彼を探してください。そう難しいことではないでしょう。
Of course, this is in keeping with the trickster archetype's tendency to, even though he is a wielder of massive power and of hidden knowledge and the beginner of great change, is often so inscrutable and occasionally annoying that no one actually likes him at all, regardless of his positive impact on the world at large.
レオンはあの子は協力してくれないの？
というかこの件に関しては彼女に一任しています。まあ新兵に経験を積ませるという意味で顔を立ててやってください。
なるほ
了解。楽しくなりそうよ。
では
The priest's tone shifted. The two new arrivals knew it was time to seize with the charades. The look in their eyes grew serious, grim. The very atmosphere around them took on a grave intensity. These were no mere thugs, no mad dogs of war lost in their own power. These were soldiers. The obsidian round table would tolerate no less. The priest spoke.
あらゆる悪、あらゆる罪も、あらゆる鎖も汝を縛れず、あらゆる禁忌に意味はない。汝の神、汝の主に、汝をこの地へ導きたもう。息ある者は一人たりとも残さぬよう、生ある者は一人残らず捧げるよう。男を殺せ、女を殺せ、老婆を殺せ、赤子を殺せ、犬を殺し、勇馬恐れてはならない。おののいてはならない。疑うことなどしてはならない。汝が騎士、獣の軍勢、神が許し、私が許す。汝の主が全てを許す。獣の総我を自負する者に、誉れ高きその名を唱えよ。
ビルヘルム、エーラ
ルサルカ・マリーア・シュベーゲリン。
汝が名誉は忠誠なり。
Oh, Rusaka.
我らが名誉は忠誠なり。
清掃13騎士団黒煙卓第3位バレリア・トリファークリストフ・ローエングリーンの名においてここに汝らを祝福する。
We've already talked about Valeria in the real world before, and that's also in the study guide. But Christoph Lohengrin, at least the Lohengrin part, is a reference to a famous piece of German opera, which I will include in the study guide after this episode, so that people can give it a look. After a brief pause, the ceremony had drawn to a close. The three spoke in unison.
ジークハイル、ビクトリ
Ooh, we already have some. Wait, let me save this. I like that we already have some foreshadowing for the future. Oh shit. So Malios, I can comment on some of these right away. Tubal Cain is a biblical character. I'm gonna put that on the study guide, and then get into depth with it when we meet him eventually. Malleus Maleficarum is this novel, this book that was published in the Middle Ages on teaching people to identify and to kill witches. It was written by this man that had been madly in love with this woman, and he was denied her affection. And in kind of his demented rage, he constructed this whole story that she was a witch and that she needed to be purged. And the release of the Malleus Maleficarum was kind of prophetic because it started the age of the witch hunts in Europe, which was the worst time if you were at all a woman, for one, or anything but the purest, most well-acting Christian. Kaziklube is also a cool one because it's a Turkish word that means impaler king, in reference to Vlad Dracula, who famously gained notoriety for being the impaler king when he went off and tried to fight the Turks against their invasion of Romania back in the Middle Ages also, and he employed this horrific impalement tactic as a psychological weapon. Leonhardt and Zun and Kind are things that we're going to talk about later. Also, Babylon, I think, was in the study guide before. I ended up removing it because I thought that it would be cool if we moved it to another part when we met her. But she's the whore of Babylon is the woman that sits atop the beast from the sea in the Book of Revelation or the Apocalypse of John, and she, is kind of the embodiment, the physical manifestation of sin and hedonism, and kind of, being there. So none of these are good people. None of these titles are good.
Okay.
These are all very bad. They represent very terrible things, or very terrible, cruel people, or the worst kind of moments in humanity's history.
I can kind of see now. I can kind of relate now a little bit.
Right. And we're going to see later that they have a specific symbolic relationship with the character, but I don't want to get too much into that. It's going to become obvious later. Tea LDO in Shambhala, July 13th. Swastika, 0 out of 8. Chapter 1, L'Enfant de la Punition, End. And we unlocked a special story, Werewolf. I think Unlimited knows what it refers to, but we're not going to read it right away. We're going to read it after the end of the Cosmi route. So, yeah.
あなたは騎士官というものを経験したことがあるだろうか。騎士ではなく騎士。
This is Mercurius's voice, by the way.
すでに知っている感覚。それは五感六感に至るまでありとあらゆる感覚器官に訴えるもの。例えば、この風景は見たことがある。この酒は飲んだことがある。この匂いは嗅いだことがある。この音楽は聞いたことがある。この女は抱いたことがある。そしてこの感情は前にも抱いたことがある。錯覚、脳の誤認識が時に生み出すなかなか風情ある一種の錯覚。あなたはそれを経験したことがあるだろうか。
例えば我々は以前も戦争に負けていた。
It's him.
さて、それはそうなってみなければわからない。そうなってみて初めてそうだったと思うがゆえの基地感である。あなたのそれはただの予感だ。いや、破滅願望と言うべきか。この戦争、あなたは負けると思われるのか。
ああ、負けるだろ
う。なぜそう思われる獣ども。あなたはゲシュタポを掌握し、総統閣下の真熱きに破竹の勢いで勝利を続ける我が軍の勇姿を知らぬわけではありますまい。
ならば東王、K は長官殿や総統閣下が無双する仙南帝国とやらの完成を信じているのか。希代の賢人、空前にして絶後の魔術師、世界の真理に最も近いとさえ言われる ヘルメス・トリスメキストス。
Oh, they name dropped him. That's real.
ケほどの男があのような愚か者どもの絵図を肯定するか。私はそう思わない。
For more details on Hermes Trismegistus, check this out, guy.
彼らだけなら確かに私も思わない。だが君にはあなたがそれを手にした者は必ず世界を支配すると言われた運命の槍の正統後継者、黄金の獣、破壊の君。あなたがここにいる以上敗北などありえない。
だが彼らは私を殺すつもりだ。
ほう
初耳だなどとは言えんだろう。テートにあって
So beautiful. I just want to say that.
Oh, the art is fucking phenomenal.
あなたは死んだの
Idris
つもり
is
か。
represented like a god in this way. No?
He is. He has this uncanny beauty to him. It's entrancing.
It is like what Shiro was talking about. It is like
Well, he is the Nazi
image
ideal.
of him.
He is the Nazi ideal, right? He has this. If there was an Aryan, he would be Heydrich, right?
Yeah.
He is the immediate demonstration of genetic supremacy. But does that make him a good person? That's the real question. That they're not actually interested in asking.
彼らの中で私という存在がそのように位置づけられたことに意味がある。もはや取り返しは効かない。
なるほど。確かに死者を概念はどうあれ生き返らせることなど不可能だ。私でさえそれはできない。死者は死んだ者ゆえに聖者へ反転させることなど不可能である。この法則は甘くない。女子供の夢物語はまさしく寝言と同義同列。
ゆえに法則を曲げたければ夢物語を排除せよ。Kの字。
祈れば叶う、泣けば奇跡が舞い降りる。そのようなデウスエクスマキナ、私に言わせれば最も抱きすべき邪悪でしかない。もしかような法則が成り立つなら、我が祈りは宇宙開闢すら起こしただろう。万人に都合のいい幸せな夢などない。この世界は容赦なく慈悲もなく血と狂気でできている。故に我が意を通したければ血と狂気に染まるのみ。一人の聖者が欲しければその数千倍の死者を捧げよう。破壊より再生の方が難しい。誰しも何かを奪い合う世界においてはそれもまた真理の一つ。しかしあなたは自らの死を回避するつもりがないようだ。少なくとも長官殿や総統閣下にはそう思わせておきたいと見える。
メメントモリ。座右の銘でな。人はいつか死ぬということを忘れてはならない。
だがそれゆえにあなたは生死を超越するにふさわしい。
超越は K のルーンだったろう。私が司るのは破壊のみだ。
法則を破壊するから超越できる。前言を修正しよう。破壊は再生よりもたやすいが再生よりも意義がある。いや、元に戻す必要などそもそもない。
どういう意味かな。
繰り返すということは存外に苦痛であるという意味だ、獣殿。例えばそう、あなたといえども幼年期はあっただろう。その自分、一日がとても長く感じられはしなかったか。一年とは永遠と同義に値するものではなかったか。
確かに子供であったなら世界は未知で溢れている。知らぬことが多い以上、学ぶべきことが膨大である以上、時はゆっくりと流れるだろう。
しかり、まさしくその通り。すなわち人の一生とは未知のものを学び 基地のものへと変える作業に他ならない。
Can we appreciate how much this reads like a Socratic dialogue? You can tell that Masada has done some reading of Plato.
それがゆえにこう思う。毎夜毎夜同じ説教を繰り返す父、同じ料理を与える母、同じ笑顔しか浮かべぬ隣人、同じ声で泣く小鳥、同じ匂いしかしない家。究極、同じようにしか沈まぬ太陽。はあ、なんとつまらない。世界はこんなにも退屈だ。これを老いと人は言う。
'Tis what man calls aging. Isn't that curious? To go back to the theme, it resembles the postulation of Shido in the very opening of the prologue, that aging is bad. There is no beauty to how the world is. Even if it's the same, it manages to find value and beauty in its sameness. And yet, coming to accept that as an adult and letting go of the childish necessity to rebel and to transform and to learn and to be dissatisfied with your state, that to these people is bad, which is curious to me because they're all these like extremely old, extremely patient beings, right? They should be the epitome of adulthood, the perfection of perspective, but instead they kind of did the horseshoe. It was the horseshoe effect. They never let go. They either never let go of their childishness, or they return to it after being adults for a while. They ungrew. They fear the age.
I think in the case of the Hydrish, it is he never let go of his childhood.
Right.
In the case of Mercury, it is that just return.
It is funny to me. I don't know. It's curious. That kind of is the ultimate symbol of the immortal, right? The immortal is a child because he fears aging. He fears dying. He fears the consummation of his purpose. Maybe because he hasn't found a purpose and he doesn't want to have one. He knows that being an adult is responsibility and that aging brings a quality to things that he doesn't want to be a part of, you know. I don't know. It's a very curious kind of situation here where you have these extremely wise sounding characters with tremendous perspective and power, but at the same time they're no more wise than the average teenager.
一歩一歩着実に死へと向かっ
It
て
is like they found the truth. It's not the truth, but it just have the same problems.
Right.
Everyone has. Even if they have all the power in the world, they can't do anything about it. It's funny. It is.
Right. I agree.
You know, I think I went to high school with that guy.
Yeah. I wonder what the connection there is.
だがそれでも年月とともに減っていくとはいうものの、未知を経験できるだけ幸せだ。生きているのだから人は。
つまり K は未知を経験できない者は生きていないと。
仮に、もし仮に生まれた時から未知を排除された存在がいたとする。基地か。彼の生はすでに知っている世界ですでに知っている出来事だけを繰り返す。なんという地獄の苦しみであることか。始まりから生きていないのだから死ぬこともできない。いな、死ねない。私はこの世界に生まれたという証が欲しい。苦しいほどに未知が欲しい。私はあなたにこの世界の残虐なる秘密を享受しようとしている。 それを聞く勇気は終わりか。あなた以外の誰にも話そうとしなかった真理に最も近いとやらいう秘密を。
答える前に一つ。なぜ K はそれを私にだけ明かそうとする？
私があなたを畏敬申し上げているからだ。あなたは強い、あなたは美しい、そしてあなたは恐ろしい。
I did it because you're hot.
私の生とは呼べる人生にあってあなたほど地獄に近い人間は見たことがない。あなたを除けば、あなたは私が知り得る中で最も悪魔に
Well,
近い
he is the
人間。
Luciferian figure, isn't he? The most beautiful, the most perfect angel that simply cannot accept his position or the beauty of the system in which he's born. That feels the necessity to overthrow everything and to start over because he must be the one that's right. There's no way that other perspectives are valid.
陳腐だな、カール。悪魔などという呼び名、珍しくもない。
究極に近くなるほど形容する言葉は陳腐になるもの。火を水のようだとは言いますまい。火は火のように、水は水のように、そしてあなたは悪魔のように。あなたは私を魔術師と言ったが、あいにくこの身はそのようなものではない。単純に言い表せるのは強き者のみ。私は弱くいい加減だ。常に本質が揺れ動き、名前だけでも幾百幾千と持っている。弱い、どうしようもなく脆い。それが私。あなたのごとき絶対とは比べるべくもない希少な存在。
This is so wonderful. This goes so well with what we were discussing before.
しかし、だからこそ分かることもあるのです。
It's such a tragic thing that Mercurius allows himself to empower the horrendously evil bearer of supremacy through revolution. And just because he has such a tremendous insecurity in his own value as a creature.
答えをお聞かせ願いたい。
よかろう。K は私を絶対と言ったが、たった今私にもそう思うものができた。カール、我が友。私も K を畏敬している。K の秘密に触れたいと願う。
残念ながらそのようだ。そうなってみて初めてそうだったと思うがゆえの基地感である。口惜しい、呪わしい。あなたと出会い、あなたほどの地獄に触れてもまだ私は生きていない。この
なるほど。わかるぞ。その無念。
ならばご理解いただけるか。あなたが破壊を司るなら。
面白い。すべてを壊すか。
そう。この国を、この世界を、目につくものすべてを壊そう。天国も地獄も神も悪魔も三千大千世界のすべてを壊そう。壊したことがないものを見つけるまで、このゲットを超越するまで、それこそだ。
ああ、そういえば私と K は前にもこの話をしていたな。
しかりしかり、100億回も繰り返した。我々は未だこの牢獄に囚われている。故に彼がいるのですよ、ザラトゥストラが。
Chapter 2, Xenophobia.
Oh, hell no.
Oh, hell no.
No. Oh.
So do you guys want to keep going, or do we stop here?
I think we should stop here.
Okay. Very well.
I don't know. I don't know how much it is. The chapter two.
There's a
Tell
lot of
the
stuff that
truth.
happens in chapter 2, so I think that's fine.
Okay, so it's better to stop.
Very well. So any last comments from either of you?
I don't know. I think Mercury and Hydrix made all the comments that I wanted to make.
That's fair.
I think Mercurius made an interesting comment about the hellish life, quote unquote, that any mortal being with foreknowledge would have. Because being immortal is already a real existence per se. Because uh, when you're immortal and you have no values, uh, when you're immortal, things don't have meaning anymore, kinda.
Right.
And yeah, and when you have foreknowledge, nothing surprises you anymore, nothing entertains you anymore. So it must truly be a hellish experience to have.
Oh, for sure. And there's the question of disillusionment. I feel where how do I put this? Mercurius has a justifiable problem with his existence, and it's understandable that he would feel this way. But I also feel like, on the other hand, he feels this way because he's too cynical to appreciate that even though things are the same, they always are a little bit different. In that the world's has that underlying kind of coherency to it, the beauty that you would expect from being an organized symphonic kind of organism, right?
But what is it with Mercurius? Like, whenever a new cycle begins again, he does not forget that his things.
Actually, I would say
Oh, go on. Go on.
Actually, I would say Mercurius is more frustrated because he has all the power in the world, but he can't do anything to change. Like you were compared with rain, because uh, you were talking we were talking about day by day the normal day the routine. You can't escape the routine. You can't. It doesn't have a change, and Mercury is kind of Mercury and Hydra too. But we are talking about Mercury. Mercury can't escape. Can't have something. Can't have the change. He doesn't. He can't see things can change. Or he knows everything. He already has all the experience in the world. So he's frustrated because he has all the power in the world, but he can't do anything to escape from this prison.
Right. I don't know. I feel like it's an understandable problem. I think this is what makes Mercurius kind of a compelling character, even though he's setting into motion these horrendous, events, as has been foreshadowed before, and as we saw in the overture. But on the other hand, I can't help but feel that this is like another product of his childishness, of his inability to simply reframe his existence. He's comfortable, kind of lying in a pool of his own trauma. He's comfortable calling himself names and wallowing in his self-pity. Oh gods, how boring life is, how miserable I am. When really, if he tried to reframe his situation, perhaps, and try to look for the meaning in the repetition, look for the things that are perhaps hidden from even him. Try to look at things less as a series of events, and more of like this eternal story that uses the same archetypes, that uses the same beats, which is the reality of all human storytelling. I feel like he could maybe not be this miserable if he chose to face this reality instead of trying to self-pity himself and create this weird dream at the expense of every other life in the universe. I don't know. I feel like this position that he puts himself in is as much his fault as it's the fault of the universe.
I don't know. Um, I don't get Mercurius' position in all of this. I don't know what it's like to be Mercurius.
Right. I think that's part of the thing, right? Like if he is this godlike figure, he is supposed to be ineffable, right? The trickster is ineffable. He exists in such a strange state of being that he has a specific way of communicating that's inscrutable. He has these fancies that he acts on, and he's completely uncaring about anyone other than himself. He's the shadow is like this. We often fear it not just because it contains the things that we don't know, but it's also about the things that we, or rather, the things that we don't like about ourselves, but also the things we don't know about ourselves, right? Or that we try to forget about ourselves. And he's kind of like the expression of that, right? Like he's the voice to that inborn frustration with the routinity of the world that I think every adult has, but tries to keep away. When really, if you wanted to be complete, you would do what Jung calls shadow work. And you would synthesize it. Okay, the world is frustrating and it is repetitive, but there is still meaning, there's still value to things, to other people, to myself, that counterbalances it. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting setup, for sure, and it's a complex situation. But I don't think it's right for Mercurius to sacrifice everything, everyone, because he is personally frustrated. I don't think it's his place to make that choice for all of existence. Just because he can't cope with his condition doesn't give him the right to change everything. You know? Especially not at the cost of everyone else that might be more grown up, more developed than he is, ultimately. But it's a complex moral issue, and I think we're going to get more in depth about it as the game goes on. Let me see if I had something in mind. I wanted to comment briefly on Rhea. I know that I mentioned this all the way back when we were still in the school scene. But Rhea is a weird name for a Japanese person to have, which I think helps make even more salient how weird she is in the context of all of this, and how it feels like she isn't who she's leading Ren to think she is. And Rhea, when I think of the name Rhea, I think of the mother of the mother goddess, right, from Greek mythology, and then also in Roman history, which kind of goes along with her motherly kind of position of reference by Eren, right? Like he respects her somewhat. He looks up to her as an older woman. But I don't know if that is going to play a part in her character development later on. I do think that she has like this weird high priestess thing about her, where she is the monochrome and stoic, and I think very clearly possesses a vast amount of hidden knowledge on what's going on. It feels weird. Feels weird. Her character is off. Well, other than that, any final thoughts before we cut it off?
Really? I just wanted to see the sister with F cups. And
Oh, true.
what was the comment?
Blue eyes.
F cups. Oh no, it is boom boing boing F cups.
Boing boing F cups. Yeah, that's right. That's what we were missing today. Was some boing boing. But yeah, this has been DSI 2, and hopefully sometime between now and 2 weeks from now, we can get through chapter 2. But yeah, it's over.